welcome you here to our Town of Littleton 2014 budget hearing, operating budget, warrant articles presentation, and
a bond hearing.
And bond hearing. I'm going to hand that over to our town manager, Fred Moody.
Thank you. The schedule for tonight is to have the bond hearing first from 6 to 6:30. We have to keep that open for a half an hour. So I will advance the slides to the bond hearing on the DPW Department of Public Works building replacement, which will be Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,200,000 for the purpose of constructing a new public works highway building on land owned by the town at West Main Street, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $1.2 million of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and to further authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon. Furthermore, to authorize the selectmen to recycle, sell, or trade any materials from the deconstruction of the old building, and to authorize the selectmen to accept and expend any matching funds, grants, or donations that may become available for such purpose. This will require a 3/5 ballot vote, and it's not projected to have any tax impact in 2014 due to the fact that if the bond is issued in 2014, the first payment would not be due until 2015. It has recommended by the Budget Committee 4-3 and recommended by the Selectmen 3-0. We do have a high-quality presentation to you tonight from the Public Works Garage Committee. Tonight on that committee we have Brody Toot, who's chairing it, Greg Wynn, George McNamara, DPW Supervisor, and there are others that you'll see their names when the slideshow comes up. So Brody, did you want to lead off on that?
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Brody too, and tonight I'm here representing on behalf.
Can you speak?
Yep, sure. On behalf of the Highway Garage Committee. The Garage Committee was formed after a ballot and an article last year in March to study the current facility. After it was passed, a sum of $5,000 was allotted, and the selectmen chose and developed a committee, and we held our first meeting in June of this year. So, kind of pressing forward, some of the committee members, just want to make credit, these are all people that were very active in assisting and developing awareness to this. So, Selectman Mike Gilman, Town Manager Fred Moody, DPW Director George McNamara, DPW Foreman Ed Parker, interim of last year Bob Green, former Director Larry Jackson, and then back over here on the other side is the volunteers, myself, Carl Hildenbrand, Greg Wynn, Jim McMahon, and Tony Alacqua. Pressing forward one. So a little bit of the history of the current building and the needs. The building was built in 1958, and it had a proposed 50-year life cycle. A lot of things have obviously changed in that 50 years, and we've kind of taken into account a lot of those things. One of the biggest two things we noted was the design of the current facility. The design of the current facility is made to melt snow, and it sheds off the roof system. And melting of the snow causes a little bit of a berm when it freezes and thaws by the doors. That's not as much of the issue of why is it melting? Well, it's designed as a hot roof to melt the snow and release all that. This was built when fuel oil was much less than it is today. So the idea of insulating it, we're going to get into in just a moment. So moving forward, Our observations as a committee, we looked at what were the observations, and we noted from a engineer's report, Provan and Lober, that was conducted in 2012, some water leaks, cosmetic gaps, and then those are kind of little things, and then we looked at the big things, the high heating costs due to the inefficient boiler and the lack of insulation, and the limited working space. The image here shown pretty well. I guess I'll use the pointer if I can find it. As you can tell, the DPW facility, shortly after snowfall, and the Littleton Police Station. If you note, there's still snow on the roof of the police station. There's no snow on the DPW garage, because that heat is utilized to melt the snow, shed it off the building, and obviously in turn they're using the internal heating source to do so. Also, as noted in the Provan and Lober report, with some deficiencies. You can see where there's some metal rusting and corroding. All of the, almost all of the kick plates across all the membrane structures have shown some type of rust and wear. Move forward. So the structural engineering report, again, the minor things we'll be able to take care of internally. The water leakage and some cosmetic stuff was able to be repaired right away. They did clean and reinforce the plates as best as could for now. But the biggest thing was insulation. As we understood, we cannot insulate the building. And from the reference right out of the letter, it cannot be insulated because the design of the structure was never entitled to hold a snow load. The snow load requirements were much higher than what our current building was made for, so insulation was not possible. And we're going to get into a bit more. Here's an email from Provan and Lober, and I'm not going to read it to you because it's kind of pointless at this stage. What this states is our current facility cannot be insulated, and if we were, we're essentially putting good money after bad. A structural engineering firm that was hired looked at the facility and came up with this conclusion. In turn, if we move forward one slide, the contractor, after we, and again it's small, and I can read this or get copies for anyone that is interested, we also had them look at the current facility. And the current facility, again, is still having these issues of, if we insulate it, what's the cost if we rehab it? Pulling out of this, the cost to rehabilitate the current facility was roughly $1 million. That's bringing it up in code with all electrical, energy, and fire improvements. On top of which, there'd be about $150,000 to $200,000 cost associated with architectural fees. That right there is in the neighborhood of the $1.2 million. One step further from that, if we do completely revitalize the building, we're going to have a problem because we still haven't expanded our footprint and advanced the facility. Okay? So the committee explored some options. We went over the report in detail. We met with the crew and asked exactly what their needs were, what their wants were, kind of made a running list. We came up with 3 options. No action, wait until something goes wrong, in the liability world we live in the structural reports stating that we need to make some immediate action, we decided that was not an option right off the bat. The second option is option 2, some upgrades in rehabilitation. Since obviously I just explained in the last few emails, we certainly could go down that road, but we still have a small building. And so our recommendation to the town was replacement of the current facility. And some of that recommendations is we're going to address the safety concerns that are present with the structure, look to build a more efficient building, extend its usable life so we can get this paid for, not have to worry about, and then have it in characteristic with the rest of the municipalities on site. A couple slides ago, you don't have to back up, but there's an image of Ray Burton and Steve Kelly at the ribbon cutting of the new biomass plant. That was designed to heat the current facility and will heat the new facility in the future. So again, some more steps in what the committee did is in July we put together our conceptual drawings and we put them out for RFQs for contractors. We had 9 contractors submit a proposal, 7 of which met our criteria. We then interviewed 3 of the best. And at this point, I'm going to switch gears and let Fred speak.
Thank you, Brody. Don't go too far because I'm sure you need to wrap things up. We did interview 3 contractors with the idea that we would be able to save the town money by choosing a design-build contract as opposed to a design-bid-build. In the second option, design-bid-build, you hire an architect or an engineer to design the building at a significant cost, and then you put that out to bid and select your contractor from that process. We felt we could save the town money and have a better project by doing a design-build approach, procurement approach, mainly because this is such a generic type building. If this were, you know, a bank or even a police station, I think the design phase is well worthwhile. But since this is essentially a open span structure with overhead doors and a few offices and a mezzanine, we felt as though the design bid or design build was the preferred option. So we interviewed the contractors. I said they all came in at over $1.2 million for the 12,500 square foot facility. We negotiated with the low bidder to get them down to the $1.2 million. And what this is a debt schedule as to how the new debt would fit in with the town's existing debt. If you look at the left-hand column, that's the police headquarters, outfitting the building, landfill closure, fire department, ladder truck, opera house, Main Street Phase 1, Reddington Street Bridge, Trans-Canada, Industrial Park Access Road, Police Department, the actual building, parking enhancement, the Green Street that was approved last year, and Grove Street and Sidewalk. And these are how the declining rate of debt. Now this schedule does go out past 2018, but in order to fit it on the slide, I dropped it off there. Last year, 2013, we paid off the police headquarters outfitting. This year, we'll pay off the landfill closure and the fire department ladder truck. That total amount that we will be reducing the debt is $235,000, this number right here. So in 2014, we'll still have $1.3 million in debt, but that's reduced to just over $1 million. And as I said opening up, if we issued the debt in 2014, the first principal and interest payment won't occur until 2015. So without the DPW garage building, our total debt will go from $1.70 per thousand to $1.40 per thousand. With the highway garage in there, it'll go from $1.70 to $1.52, and it will not go down by $235,000. It'll go down by about $140,000. But even with that reduction and building the new building, everyone's tax bill, the average tax bill of a $153,000 home, will still see a $28 reduction in their tax bill with the construction of the new highway garage.
Okay, just moving on a little bit more about our new design and what we looked at. One section we focused heavily and worked with the Energy Committee was energy improvements, LED lighting as much as possible, solar passive doors, and essentially what those are, they allow heat and light to transport through. We're lucky to have a southern-facing exposure, and they will supplement the heating and lighting during the day. High R factors in the roof and the walls, continuing, like I stated earlier, with the biomass heat, and then backup for the propane. Safety improvements, again, a couple slides, you'll see some of the current configurations of the highway garage. One big design is drive-through bays, having all the active trucks in a drive-through zone, so they will be able to pull through at the start of their shift instead of having to back in. By code, a carbon monoxide handling system will be installed. There is one installed now, but there's a new air handling system that will automatically detect a hazardous environment and evacuate the air. The building will be fire alarmed and sprinklered, and there'll be some fire-related storage for all the chemicals. So again, a little bit more on the current configuration. Can't see it very clearly here, but one of the smaller of the trucks has to park at the end of the shift in between a two-post lift due to the configuration. There's about a couple inches between the plow and a dump body in this image, and then another couple inches between one of the plow blades and a back tire of another vehicle. So there's about 6 bays of equipment in a 4-bay building currently. A new design projected here, and there's some other handouts in the back that you'll be able to see it clearly. We went to a very basic shed design. The current design is working really well for the facility. We just essentially want to start fresh with a little bit bigger improvements. This is the current configuration with all the equipment inside. This would be a side view, and then the frontal view. The new floor plan with all the equipment fitting underneath the roof, so maintenance should be reduced somewhat, but more importantly, all the equipment will be inside, ready to be accessed at any given point. If any of you have been through the current garage, the layout is almost identical for some offices, locker areas. We did add a woman's locker room with a changing area for any requirements going forward, and a meeting room in here, and then above all of this will be a mezzanine for storage. Here's an image of a projected image of the new highway garage that we've come up with. Going forward, we've had some of these dates already checked off. What I would offer all of you is on February 6th, we're having another informational session at the current DPW facility. I'd invite everyone there. Any questions we'd be able to answer immediately, but more importantly, you could see what the current configuration is set up. Questions, comments? Perhaps the rest of the committee can come join me at this point to help answer the question.
Where was the meeting going to be held on the 6th of February?
Okay. It's going to be at the DPW garage. Okay.
Bruce Hadlock. Doesn't work. Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. How many square feet does the present building have?
The current building is just under 10,000 square feet. The new building will be 12,000, just about 12,000. However, the current facility has a large addition on the back that the Littleton High School put in place, and it's not usable garage space, it's used as storage.
Okay. Now, at the present time, you said that the building had been used and was used very well in the past for the last 50 years?
Perhaps you could answer that.
Correct, yes. Yeah. Now, when it was built with a design that the snow came off the roof as such on it, and it wasn't heated. Now, why are you in turn going through with the idea that we've got to have a massive building all heated and all in turn insulated like that? We don't need to have, we need to be going back and doing the same thing. You don't need to have a huge 12,000 square foot building that's all spray foamed and heated and everything like this. It's just, you're not going to utilize that any more than they utilize the one that they have now at the present time. They use the garage and there's a work area and it's moderately heated out of the thing on it. You don't provide high temperature heat for people that are working in that environment. You don't have them freeze to death either. But building a building out of the thing on it, I honestly think that what's the square foot cost of the new one? That's number one.
We actually just asked 3 different questions. The square cost for the new one is around $96 a square foot. The current facility has always been heated. It has never been a cold space. If it was a cold space, the snow would be allowed to accumulate on the roof and the building would catastrophically fail. The existing building has a rating of 15 pounds per square foot. It will not handle a snow load. The current code is a snow load rating of 65 pounds per square foot. So, to answer your question, the reason we would like 2 more bays, and I'm kind of on the same page with you from the outside looking in. I'm new in the department, and we just spent 3 days getting the grader before Christmas inside the building, 2 men, consistently for those 3 days, so we could get it warmed up with 100 gallons of hydraulic fluid in order to start it to pick the snow off Main Street. One of the advantages of adding another bay is the grader will be stored inside at 50 to 55 degrees. So instead of 24 man hours, we're going to start the grader, let it warm up for 5 minutes, and we're going to go pick snow. And it's also goes along with the tractor, it goes along with the holder, it goes along with another dump truck that sits outside that has to go through the environments we put up with here in the North Country. This is for reduced maintenance and the longevity of the vehicles.
I guess that you're managing it, but I look at it that says it's not very expensive to put a heater on that grader on it and plug it in. And that's what all construction people do today. They don't build a building to put a piece of equipment in. They put plugs on their heaters and do it the same with you're talking about trucks or graders. And all you do is plug it in on it, and that's not what we should be doing. If you put that grader or any of that equipment inside of a building with a heated basis out of it, it's just going to rot out of the thing on it too. You look over in the industrial park over here, and you look around in other towns and everything, they have a row of plug-in heaters for their trucks and equipment. I'm not a believer in what you're talking about. That's number one. The other part of it is, I talked to this Jim McMahon, who was on your board. He just got through building a building down there, over on Railroads, down on Riverside Drive. His was about 9,000 square feet in there. Also heated more. You have a new heating system over here. And he got probably 50% of what you're, less than 50% of the money in a building of that nature in there to build that building down there. It's not exactly the same thing, not exactly the same thing as far as that part. But I think your pricing on a metal building out of it is way out of whack. You're not anywhere near in the ballpark out of the thing on it. Whether you've got the best contractors in the world or something, but if you go out and find these people out of the thing on it, you can find stuff like that to do like McMahon did down here on it, and for probably almost half of what you got in here. I think you're really out of proportion as far as asking for the money as to what you have, and your operations of what you're going to do. Now you're operating, we did it for 50 years. We operated the building, yes, letting the heat rise, yes, it was oil. You had the snow come off the roof. And the fact is, if we're not building a dance hall or where somebody's got to be in here and inside, you're building a building, and it should be more practical on the basis of usage on what you're managing. It all depends on how you're going to manage it. And if you do a good job of managing it, you don't need to spend that kind of money. If you're going to be looking for a castle out of here and building something on it and you want to manage it different, that's a different ballgame. But I do not believe you're in the ballpark pertaining to it, and I think that the people of Littleton should not be voting that kind of money. I really think you're out of whack. Thank you.
My name is Dan. The other day, a couple days ago, when we met at the church, you did not have a rehab price at that time, so I take it that since then, this 1.1 million and plus is something that you've gone and gotten recently?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
You had a fourth option that you didn't look at, and that is a replacement of the existing building. In other words, the same size building. That's one of the things we didn't look at. Another thing is that somebody mentioned to me that with the size of building that you're looking at and offering here, we could, with some thought and foresight, also look at housing the cemetery's vehicles. In other words, with a little bit bigger building, going with other departments' vehicles, so that we don't have to maintain the buildings that are used for them right now. We could also, if it was a little bit taller, might be able to put something up there where we could house the city, the town administration instead of at the bank. So there's a lot of things that, I'm not suggesting that we do that, I'm just saying there's a lot of things that we haven't taken into consideration, and I would suggest a no vote on this until all these other things are looked at.
One of the things, Dan, that you had mentioned was the same size. One of the key arguments to the replacement is to have bigger overhead doors. And if we built something the same size, today's equipment is larger. If you took an F-550 with a plow next to a 1.5-ton truck back built in the 50s and 60s, you would see they're much bigger. The plows are bigger. So to build something the same size isn't feasible. It was really an option that we never looked at, because the idea is that these overhead doors are wider and taller, and also we have the drive-through capability. So for safety reasons, when they're backing in, now they can drive in.
Rather than same size, let me rephrase that, same footprint, so that you could get, if you're going to build something but the same footprint, then you could get doors that you felt you needed for that.
Ryan Ward. Mike, I didn't realize the budget cycle was so rough that you came out with an ECI.
This is protection against vampires.
Oh,
And lynchings.
Lynchings as well.
first off, I want to congratulate this committee. I'll be 62 in April, and I've seen a lot of bond presentations, and this is one of the most thorough. And you used a model that we've used consistently through the years for successful bond initiatives. You built a choir. You brought in the people who actually use the building. You brought in people like Larry Jackson that have a lot of experience in it, and then you have members of the community. You also reached out for technical assistance that was above your pay grade, so that you got more information out of the process rather than less, and I think it shows. Last summer, I asked Fred roughly what the cost was going to be for this proposal, and I said around $100 a square foot, and he said, Brian, don't be ridiculous. Looks like it's going to be about $125 a square foot is what he said. Well, what you've done is you actually, with all costs involved, construction plus soft costs, according to my math, the original goal was 1.5 million, you're in at 1.2 for a 12,000 square foot building, that's $100 a square foot, with all costs involved. Am I missing something? So, it appears what you did through the process was that you separated needs versus wants, and you worked it. And that's what needs to happen in a thorough presentation, so that you have a credible presentation. It appears that you've done that. I think $100 a square foot for this facility is reasonable. You've also been working, reached out to other contractors, and I think you've come up with a credible contractor with a guaranteed price. In the past, some of the problems with bond issues is that there'd be a lot more bells and whistles and say, maybe we can get it through for this, and then the price comes in, and then the bells and whistles have to be removed. It appears that you've removed the bells and whistles ahead of time, so that you have a guaranteed price, so that the voters will know what they're going to pay for. The next thing is increasing the size from 10,000 to 12,000 square feet. That's an extremely appropriate thing to do based upon what Greg said. The equipment's bigger. Anybody remembers the size of the plows in the 50s and 60s? The equipment is a lot bigger now than it is, and the 20% increase is not something outlandish. You're not building a Taj Mahal or a monument. You're building a functional garage. And I think one of the key things that has come out from this was that the original design team in 1958 did a pretty good job, you know, as far as laying it out for the size equipment they had, and you guys didn't come in here and reinvent it. The next thing is the energy efficiency. The town last year, in an overwhelming vote, voted to make a commitment to reduce the consumption of oil through the pellet system. You guys have incorporated that through your radiant heat. You're using the pellet system. You're using passive solar. You're not going in for a lot of gimmicks and things. That has a wonderful southern exposure, and the passive solar makes all the sense in the world. My understanding is you're also going to reuse the waste oil heater that's in it now, so that that will be available to use to heat part of it. Is that correct?
No, actually, we've decided, after speaking with Tony Alacqua, we made a decision. The transfer station actually runs out of waste oil. We only create a little less than a barrel a year, so rather than reuse that, we're just going to take our barrel of oil up to the transfer station, allow them to burn it. That way, that town doesn't have to maintain 2 waste oil heaters throughout the year.
So in other words, we're not generating enough to make it worthwhile at this particular.
No, not at this point.
Well, that's probably a good thing, because that's one less pollutant we don't have to deal with. And then the last thing is with the propane backup. I think heading in that direction, the block where I rent from the Eames family, this past summer they installed propane underground tanks. Frank Dodge put them in, and a lot of commercial structures are heading towards propane for costs. So I think you guys are ahead of the curve on that. One thing that wasn't mentioned that I think, at least for me, is a major priority. I know people that have worked in that garage that came out with respiratory illnesses because of the fumes from that particular building. If you go in there, there is a residue of odor. And with the equipment that's built into this, which wasn't, is that still in the building?
Yes, the new life safety air evacuation system's there.
Okay. So in other words, the improved ventilation there will be, so that the people who are working there will be. One of the things that we have to be aware of is that we can't not look at that particular thing. If an employee works there and down the road, there's a potential for some liability if we don't have a safe environment for them. Doesn't appear like, again, you built something, Rube Goldberg, to deal with it, but it is an issue that needs to be dealt with, and I applaud you for doing that. The other thing is, I think, again, you didn't reinvent the wheel. The building looks a lot like the old building, except you got a flat roof versus a pitched roof. And I think because it has worked well, I think that be done. Now, I got a quick trick question for you. That building, that lot where that building was done, I looked it up today, was acquired in 1957 for and it has 3.8 acres. Any idea how much the town paid for that? Any of you know? $1,000. The town in '57 got the land, the next year they built it. And I think it's held up well, probably one of the best acquisitions we've had as a community, and reusing that space makes all the sense in the world. And then I think, as Fred has laid out, the ability, one of the things that you always want to do is how can you reallocate resources. And with the paying off of the landfill bond, to be able to slide this in as a portion of it, not all of it, to pay for it, I think is a very appropriate thing to do. And that landfill bond has been very, at the time it was voted in, it was kind of controversial. Why are we paying to bury a dump? Well, as it's turned out, I think that's turned out to be a very good decision. We wouldn't have the community we had today if we still drove by I-93 and saw the open dump there. A lot of people would not have stopped as much. In addition, because of Margie's commitment and Tony Alacqua's, in 1992, when we first started the recycling process, we were facing $400,000 a year at that time of solid waste costs because we had to change. I think in 2012, we were able to do it without any taxes, 2013, my understanding from what Brian told me, that they almost hit it, but there was some volatility in the market. So sliding this in to replace the landfill cost at no additional cost to the taxpayer, I think is good government, good planning, and does a good job for the taxpayer. So I applaud everybody who did this, and again, I never went to any of their meetings. I saw Brody's presentation on it. I did follow the newspaper, but I think you guys have done an outstanding job, and you all should be congratulated.
Yeah, Ron Bull, just a quick question. In the early stages of the committee work, I think there was some discussion about possibly doing something about the salt and sand to shelter it. Was that abandoned?
Yes, at this point it was. With further research looking into a new type of salt shed, I believe that's something maybe in another year the DPW department could do ourselves. A lot of the newer ones we've researched around New England are canvas structures, arch-type, pre-engineered truss structures on top of something as simple as concrete block.
Good. Thanks.
Dan, again, I forgot to mention a couple things. There were some misleading statements. When we look at the future, 14, 15, 2014, 2015, and the lack of money being spent there, that is taking into consideration that next year and the year after, nobody's going to ask for anything, and I don't believe that's going to be true. I think that there will be things put on the table that are going to require money so that those empty spaces won't look as pretty as they do now. One of the things that was said was that the town, through an overwhelming vote, voted for the new heating setup at the garage, and the vote that got that in was 68% of the vote. Now that's an overwhelming vote only of the people who voted. That actually the people who voted for the device were less than 11% of the town.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple of points. In response to something that you asked about, Bruce, I do appreciate you always trying to look for the way that the town can save the most money, but I have a very personal reason for knowing that this building is 55 years old, because 1958 was a special year for me also. 55 years from now, chances are pretty good we're going to need a bigger building than what we're building right now. I'm guessing that the changes that came, probably the building that's there now looked pretty cavernous at the time that it was built. And I'm guessing that the town of Littleton is going to grow over the next 50 years, and that at some point we're going to need the extra 2,000 feet, which doesn't seem like an awful lot of extra space to begin with. I also just wanted to point out that, right, I didn't write out what I wanted to point out, so I guess I'm not pointing out anything else, that's all. Oh, no, I know what it was, Dan. The misleading that you spoke of, Fred was talking about a particular line in the budget, which is the debt line. He didn't say that the town was going to pay less overall. He said that in the debt payment line, it was going to go down by this much, and even with the new DPW garage added in, it was still going to be less in 2015 than it is this year.
Yes, I didn't say Fred was misleading. I said the information is misleading.
Well, I think that it's important that it's not like the town, everybody's going to pay $28 less. It's just in that line item, and I think that that needs to be understood.
I guess we have another question.
Well, I like Brian. I think you people do a very good job. Anybody who serves on any committee spends a lot of time at it, and they are commended to do so. But I'm looking at it strictly as an outside position, the fact of, one, Again, no different than George standing up there and telling us the fact that he spent 3 days getting a grader up there. I mean, you plug them in. It's management techniques of what you're going to have, and that's going to be the same thing in 50 years from now. Whoever manages, or whatever you take on it, is going to be there. When that building was built, the town of Littleton and the highway department had 25 employees. Harry Goodell, I think, was the original one that got there. And I think we had 25 employees working for the town. How many people do you have working for the town now, George?
9, 2 part-time.
Yeah, I'm going to say...
I think you should double-check the town report. I actually went back and read the town report,
Yeah.
and he had a 7-man crew, and they're all actually in a photo on one of our slides, that one right there, with all the vehicles the town owned at the time.
Well, I think that you had other sources, like the dump, the rubbish, maybe the parks. I don't know what they were talking about, but I remember they came back and said that that was about what it was, and I'm only going on my memory, that's all, so maybe not very good anyway. But again, I commend you people for what you're dealing with, but I still feel either the management of what you have and how you're operating it is not the best compared to what I think it should be, because I don't think we should be building a heated building for all that equipment. I think you're going to just rust it out, and we'll have to be replacing it more on it by doing what you're talking about. Again, that building in turn was designed to have the snow melt off it, but it wasn't designed to be having everybody sitting in there in a building on the thing on it. And I don't need to think that you have to be doing that when you're talking about insulating a structure of that nature either. We don't need a 12,000-foot building. We need to have maybe 2 bays that are fully insulated. If you wanted to get something that was undercover, that's one thing, but consequently, you don't need to be building a building of that magnitude fully insulated out of the thing to operate from. And again, I think you should be plugging in that stuff on the outside, not inside. We don't have to be having it inside. This is, I know the town manager wants to have everything inside from the point of that, and I'm sure everybody would like to, but I don't think you look around and not every home has their cars in their garage or provides a garage out of the thing on it too. You do what you can afford to do, and when you're talking $95 a square foot, you've already got your sewerage, your water, you've already got your heating system designed for that as far as that part is concerned. I really think that your pricing is the only thing that I'm concerned about. Is I think that you're not in the ballpark on whoever's giving it to you on the thing on that square foot cost. Commercial buildings do not cost that kind of money even on a square foot basis, I don't think, especially when you get your heat provided for you. So I really think that there's something still radically wrong in what you're doing. So, thank you.
Hey Bruce, I got 3 points came to my head. I have to say them before I forget. I think we could probably all agree that the town crew is underappreciated, maybe. You know, I've heard some comments there around town that, you know, what do they need this for? What do they need that for? It's the town crew. But you know, they're the guys that get the sidewalks cleaned off, they get the roads plowed, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, but the temperature inside that building, the new building is proposed to be...
The same as the current, 50 degrees.
Yeah, that's what I thought, 50, 55. So one of my concerns would be, what's the trade-off between plugging everything in and taking the man hours to do that with the possibility of a fire from the heaters? I'm just curious what the cost would be related to actually having a building that's, you know, efficient and set up with door designs in such a way that they're not having it open as long as the current building while they're trying to back in. Is that correct? So now when they're driving through, they don't need a guy behind them and have a safety factor of running them over, hitting the sides of the doors. They're actually driving through in a wider door. And I think that if the building right now is heated, I can't imagine that we're going to use more pellets to heat the new building as we are the old. So I don't know that, and plugging in, you know, how many heaters is it going to take, and then, you know, with the threat of a fire from the heaters as well as a concern.
You mentioned fire. There was a fellow down in Monroe, New Hampshire, put all of his equipment in this garage out of the thing on it. I can remember because I think it cost the insurance company about $400,000. It all burned. If you have these things outside, you don't necessarily have it burn. My experience with equipment burning, it goes back to the insurance industry. You used to see every skidder in the country be outside, and they would all have pitch and everything like this on it. They would burn, and when they had these gas-operated things on there to do it. The insurance companies got so they wouldn't insure anything as far as the skidder was concerned. So what they did was they improvised, and they put on those automatic things that you plug in on the front of a truck on it. So you plug it into the radiator, you drive it up to it and let it run, and it would do it so that they in turn would plug them in, and you warm up the radiator to get the thing started, and it avoided any fires. So that there's a lot of ways you can do things and improvise on the thing on it. But if you put all your equipment in a building, and suddenly the building does either, I use the word collapse, burn, fire, something that's out of it, you've got an awful lot of equipment that's in there that's going to be destroyed. Never mind just trucks and equipment, you have all the tools and equipment too. And I'm just not convinced that it's managing its good philosophy to do it in that particular manner, as well as the cost. Thank you.
Rudy Giles, member of the Budget Committee. I had an opportunity about 2 weeks ago to go into the building, the garage building, and probably talk with George, but he wasn't there. But it was 2 more guys working, and I asked permission, to assess the problem in the garage yard. My own opinion, I'm a mechanic engineer. I'm not a civil engineer, but I saw that the garage really needs, to be rebuilt, to be fixed, whatever it is. My main concern is this, that, the way you guys repair the existing garage, by looking around, I see that the people inside the garage over there, they were wearing T-shirts. That's the temperature. For somebody that wears a T-shirt inside that garage over there, the temperature probably would have been 60, 65 degrees. Regardless of that, my main concern is this, that it's not that the garage, we don't need a new garage. We do need a new garage. The point is this, that we can wait, because I saw the repair that was done in the garage. And probably that garage can stay another year, at least another year or more. I understand that, that you guys want to save money on a heater system and this and that, but the main concern as a budget committee, member, it's money. We're talking about money over here. And eventually, the board over here has got to come up with, a kind of solution to making sure, that the people of Littleton, they really got to pay for this thing. My suggestion is this, that probably we should wait at least a year or 2 years. Thank you very much.
We're now closing the bond hearing, and we're going to commence with the budget hearing. You want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, that's good. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll commence after that. Chairman advises me we need to get reorganized here. Moving on to the second phase of tonight's meeting, the 2014 budget hearing, and we'll be reviewing the operating budget and warrant articles. List of presenters. And Article 1 on the warrant will be the election of officers. And for tonight, I've chosen to add a little extra information to Article 1. The positions listed there are elected positions, and I have listed the incumbent in those positions. The reason for that is twofold, so that you know who that is. But perhaps as important, I had at least one elected official on that list expressed surprise last week that their term was up. So for all those people whose names are listed, your terms are up this year. If you would like to run again, you have until Friday, January 31st at 5 p.m. to go to the town clerk's office and file. To everyone else, these positions are open, and if you choose to declare your candidacy, you do also need to go to the town clerk and fill out the necessary paperwork. Article 2, we have a zoning article, zoning ordinance amendment that we haven't seen on the ballot for a few years, but I'll just read this. To see if the town will vote to amend the Littleton zoning ordinance by adding poultry to the definition of livestock, by clarifying that the grazing, care, raising, or keeping of livestock shall be a permitted use in the rural zone by special exception in the R1, R1A, R2, C, commercial, and I, industrial, and in the MU, mixed-use zoning districts, and by established detailed minimum standards governing this use. This clarification will replace any current mention of the raising of farm animals or livestock in Article 4, Sections 4.0201 through 4.0207. The complete text of the proposed amendment is available for review at the town office and the town website, and copies will be available the day of the voting. Following question will appear on the official election ballot. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 1 as proposed by the planning board for the existing town ordinance as proposed by the planning board? This amendment adds poultry to the definition of livestock, clarifies that the grazing, care, raising, or keeping of livestock is a permitted use in the rural zone and by special exception in the R1, R1A, R2, CI, and MU zoning districts, and establish detailed minimum standards for this use by enacting new sections 6.12, 6.12.01, 6.12.02. So we're not here to discuss this tonight. We're here for the budget, but I thought where it falls in the on the warrant, it was worth a mention. Article number 3, Department of Public Works.
Before you go there, will the voter know what those numbers mean at the bottom? I mean,
That's why I mentioned it, that you need to research that for your own use. Go to the website, and the zoning ordinance is there, so you can check all of those sections. Okay. And the other thing is the planning board has a meeting tomorrow night at the community center at 6 p.m. It'll be their final hearing on this article. Okay. Article number 3, Department of Public Works building replacement. We had the bond hearing immediately preceding the budget hearing. I will dispense with the reading of that since we spent the past 45 minutes on it. Article 4, reconstruction, repaving, and upgrading of Pleasant Street sidewalk. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $113,370 for the purpose of upgrading and improving a portion of Pleasant Street sidewalk from Oak Hill Avenue to Pine Street, and to further authorize the withdrawal of $36,000 from the parking meter special revenue fund toward this purpose, and authorize the issuance of not more than $77,370 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provision of the Municipal Finance Act, and to further authorize the selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and determine the rate of interest thereon, and to authorize the selectmen to accept and expend any matching funds, grants, or donations that may become available for such purpose, and to further raise and appropriate the sum of $27,000 for the first year's loan payment. 3/5 ballot vote required. This was not recommended by the Budget Committee, but it was recommended by the selectmen and is a projected tax impact of 3.5 cents. What this is intended to do is supplement grant funds that the town has received from the Safe Routes to School program. That grant program had two sections to it. One was to upgrade the sidewalk and crosswalks on Union Street in front of Lakeway Elementary, and the other was the Pleasant Street work that we just talked about. The committee and the Safe Routes to School folks have been working for several years on this. And if you start at the line F there, current available funding of $210,608, that's the total Safe Routes to School grant money. The base bid for the Union Street money was $109,447. There's an extra number in there, sorry. Preliminary engineering is $45,992. Construction engineering, somehow my numbers got a little strange, is $37,000. Right-of-way acquisition is $4,253. So all of that adds up to $192,864. And you subtract that from the $210,000, which leaves $17,000 available for the Pleasant Street sidewalk. The committee felt as though the Union Street work was the #1 priority, so whatever was left would then be used on Pleasant Street. But the Pleasant Street work has been estimated to cost of $131,114. So that's why we're asking for authorization to borrow $113,000 for 3 years. Here are a couple of photographs of the sidewalk along Pleasant Street. The town crew has done some temporary patching work for the winter, but it continues to be a substandard sidewalk. And the design work that has been done will bring it up to current specifications for both height and width. It is a heavily used sidewalk, and that it's both a route to school and also a route to Remick Park. Yes, we have questions.
I noticed that's a concrete sidewalk. Will that be concrete, or are you just digging it out and putting tar on it?
It'd be paved.
Paved.
Granite curbing with pavement.
What constitutes, I mean, that one there, which probably lasted, in my lifetime, probably 60, 70, or 80 years. I look at even the sidewalks on the main street, and I don't think they're that great, and we have concrete on it too. But just paving the sidewalks out of the thing on it, the longevity you get on pavement is not very long.
My understanding is that it's easier to maintain, and concrete is much more expensive to construct initially and more expensive to maintain over the life of the sidewalk.
Again, I'm no expert in sidewalks by any means, but the fact is that that one was poured with concrete, and it did last a long time, and there's no way that anybody is going to you can maintain them, and it may be easy to maintain, but if you've got to replace them with just paving, as far as that part is concerned, over a short period of time, you'd be lucky if you get 25 years out. So I'm not convinced that necessarily you have the motive is maybe to get less, but do it so that it lasts longer out of it. I mean, your community is going to be here a lot longer than I am and everything else on it, but consequently you should be looking at it to say if you build something that's going to last, not build something that's going to be easy to maintain out of it, not if it's going to only last half as long, because the people are going to have to pay for that years down the road.
George wanted to respond. You want me to address that?
Sure, please.
A couple of reasons we've selected to go with the asphalt sidewalks in lieu of the concrete sidewalks. And number one, the initial cost. The initial cost of a concrete sidewalk is approximately 4 times the cost of an asphalt sidewalk. In the past 5 years, there's been a number of sidewalk sections throughout town that have been replaced, which in my opinion are very attractive. They have a granite curb with an asphalt coating. Another reason we prefer the asphalt sidewalk is the corrosion the salt creates in the concrete. And with that, you get what you see right here with frost buckling it. And the third reason is if a sidewalk has to be redone, it has 2 inches of asphalt, it's easy to go in, remove the asphalt, redo the gravel structure below, and repave. Thank you.
I got one more question. Is there any of that money that's grant money for sidewalks for schools? Is this considered to be part of that route too? And you're gonna get grant money out of this?
I think, as I said, there will be, the total grant is $210,000. The work for the Union Street is $192,000. That leaves us $17,000 available for Pleasant Street. Total Pleasant Street work is $131,000, so we're $113,000 shy.
So that 210 is what grant money is available. There's a name for that.
Safe routes to school.
Safe routes to school.
Correct.
That's right. Consequently, that's the maximum we could get, or?
Now, well, I've tried to go back and ask them if there's additional funding available, and they said not likely.
Okay, thank you.
Fred, I think it's fair to say that this project has had a tortured past. What is this, the third or the fourth year that you've been working on it?
Well, I've been here 3 years, and I've been working on it since I arrived, so yes.
And just so it's clear from the taxpayer's perspective, is that if the taxpayers going forward vote to pass a 3-year bond with a total cost of $77,000, there will be $210,000 worth of grant funds available to fund this project. Is that correct?
And the Union Street project, too.
The two of them, Pleasant Street and Union Street. So roughly, it's about a grant of a 3 to 1, little bit less, $3 of grant money for every dollar that the town will spend. Okay. In 2008, 2009, the town, I think it was 2008, the town voted $1.5 million to do Grove Street and do a series of sidewalks, $500,000 for the sidewalks and $1 million for Grove Street. Because the town put it all together in one project, water, sewer, the whole 9 yards, it was a considerable savings. And then the town subsequently voted again to use the savings for more sidewalks. And I think George made reference to the particular sidewalks that were installed. All of those other sidewalks that were put in at our expense. This is the first one that I think we've had, correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, where there's actually grant funds that are available to achieve sidewalk improvement both on Union Street and Pleasant Street. Is that correct?
That's as far as I know, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a good deal, 3 to 1.
Article 5, purchase of a highway truck replacement. See if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to enter into a 3-year purchase lease agreement in the amount of $141,613 over a term of 36 months for the purpose of purchasing a 2014 or newer heavy dump truck with a new wing and plow as a replacement for the one of the older heavy dump trucks in service in the Littleton Highway Department, and to authorize the use of $35,000 from the undesignated unreserved fund balance toward the purchase of said vehicle, and to authorize the selectmen to trade or sell the replaced vehicle and worn wing and plow, and to further raise and appropriate the sum of $37,205 for the first year's loan payment and setup costs. This lease agreement contains a non-appropriation escape clause. This is by a simple majority vote, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-4, recommended by the Selectmen 3-0, with a annual tax impact for the next 3 years of 5 cents. This is the truck that we're looking to replace. This is the transfer station truck. That's the transfer station truck bed. And you can see it's rusted completely through in certain places. So the plan here is to buy a new truck for the highway department, scrap the transfer station truck, and give the transfer station the truck that will be replaced at the highway department. Here is a list of all of the trucks that we have in service at the DPW garage. type, mileage, condition, what they're used for, who they're used, and this truck is needed, and most of the trucks are very heavily used, and George, I think, would like to address this question also.
This truck is a large plow truck. There are international brand plow trucks, 4900 series. We currently have 5 of these on site. 2 are spares. The 2 spares you see are very old with high mileage. They would be truck number 6 and truck number 4. They're used almost every single storm, these spare trucks. We experience a lot of breakdowns. If you look, the truck we're going to replace, number 5, it's a 2005 International. It has 95,000 miles. These trucks start to expend their life expectancy around 10 years and 100,000 miles when they're at the point it costs more to keep them on the road than they're worth. Truck number 16 has 104,000 miles. It's in poor condition. Its status, it's used limited status. That's the one we plan on taking to the transfer station. Truck number 5 is the one we are going to retire to the spare truck in the garage. Truck number 6 is the one you saw the picture of that had the sander in the back that's held together with plywood. That's the one we would look to trade in or auction off at a minimum bid of a trade-in price. One of the reasons I'm bringing this up is we're real late in the rotation. The rotation actually probably should have happened a year ago. I'm trying to avoid a serious situation where we need 3 trucks in 1 year. So we'd like to get this large truck into the rotation this year, then hopefully we'll see how it goes, maybe a 550 again next year. There's been 1 new truck added to the fleet since 2008. We're just trying to be proactive here and keep things running efficiently.
Brian?
Well,
I was over in another town. Does the town of Littleton keep records on every single truck as far as maintenance, oil changes, what's necessary, stuff like this? I look at something of this nature, even on a body, and I'm not seeing where anybody's painting it. So I'm wondering if somebody is not doing their maintenance out of the thing on it as far as that part. So do they provide and take care of and have a maintenance schedule for every single vehicle?
Yes, we do. They have records what's happened to these trucks since the time they were purchased. As you know, we have had 3 different department heads in the last 3 years. It's huge on my list of priorities, getting the maintenance started up again on these vehicles like this. I visited 2 local towns, and I was very impressed with the condition of their vehicles. I said, wow, how do you keep these things so rust-free? Ours don't look very good. He said, every year we sandblast them, we prime them, we paint them. Every year. We've already budgeted money this year. We've already made a purchase for some paint, some materials, some sandblast sand, and as soon as we start plowing roads, we're going to redo all the trucks we have any blemishes whatsoever, and we're going to try to get back on schedule with the maintenance from the cosmetic point of view. The engines, we have very little problem with, except for things that are out of our control.
As George mentioned, the town has only bought 1 new dump truck since 2008. That was in 2012. Obviously, the reason that was we went into a recession, and the agreement by all concerned was to try to get an extended life out of these particular vehicles. Prior to that, there used to be an annual appropriation to replace 1 of these a year and sometimes 2 a year. And correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but wasn't it a 5-year lease that we used to do and spread the cost over 5 years for these units?
Some were 3-year and some were 5-year.
Because as it was explained to me, with the larger dump trucks, what they tried to do was The more expensive ones, they go with a 5-year lease, try to get 2 years without any payments, and then cycle them into the spare. So you had a 9-year life cycle for them. Obviously, some of these have been extended beyond that because of the recession that we went into. I don't think there's any question that we need to start upgrading our fleet, and I'm glad the point that Bruce made, plus what George's response to it, that enhanced maintenance will again extend the life. But you know, these vehicles, you know, they're not quite consumables, but they do run out of life. So I think it's a good investment. Why 3 versus 5? Any?
Just tried to keep the payments so that they're cycled out quicker. That's all.
Thank you.
Bruce Hadlock. One of the other ones that I've noticed, tremendous amount of the contractors are using these trailers that they buy on it. Now, they're not the heaviest reinforcing, but I'm sure you can get them. But I watched these people today, and they're using these trailers you hook up to, like the orange truck that George drives, and I bet you could get a tremendous amount of use, anything from picking up your rubbish on the street or anything else on it. I bet you could, for a very low amount of money, I think it would be possibly a good investment, and somebody should look into it. I'll bet you for $15,000, you'd get an awful lot of usage out of something of that nature, and you'd also be able to use it for less services as far as gas or whatever it is, because a pickup truck basically pulls them as far as that part. But I'm not saying that they'll last as long, because I know the one I own is not very thick out of the thing on it, and mine is rusted too. But consequently, I believe in managing it. That is a fantastic thing that all the contractors have almost all invested in. I even think, you know, Mr. Wynn, I think, is in one too, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of people have got them today. They've come a long way.
Quick question, not related directly to this vehicle, but the overall vehicle fleet. Last year, wasn't it the sweeper that was discussed at great length? What's the status
Correct.
of the sweeper?
Well, we did appropriate money to fix the sweeper up, and so money, that is serviceable for another 3 to 5 years, George, you think?
Yes, all the money was used. It's in fantastic shape. The operator that runs the sweeper, his comment was it's working better than it ever has. And there was a little bit of funds left over, so we were able to pick up the consumables, the brushes, the hoses. So we're in good shape with the sweeper.
Good. Article 6, onto the operating budget. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles or other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant and as amended by vote of the first session. For the purpose set forth therein, totaling $7,931,024. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $7,852,230, excuse me, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous actions of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special town meeting in accordance with RSA 40, Section 13, Roman numerals 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6-2, recommended by the Selectmen 3-0. Proposed tax impact of the proposed operating budget, $6.68. Impact of the default budget, $6.60. The approach for the 2014 budget is as follows, I think, sums it up. While the national economic indicators have shown improvement over last year, local economic prosperity is still lagging. Due to prevailing economic challenges, the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee have recommended the proposed 2014 operating budget. The following 2014 budget and warrant articles were carefully considered by the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee to maintain a consistent level of service while addressing some of the town's most pressing infrastructure needs. The bottom line, 2014 proposed budget is $164,258 over the 2013 budget, or a 2.11% increase. The 2014 default budget is $85,464 over the 2013 budget, or a 1.1% increase. And the 2014 proposed budget is $78,794 over the 2014 default budget, or a 1.01% increase. This chart shows you how the budget is put together in large sections. The operating budget, we have outside funds, we have debt service, we have enterprise funds for the total. And these are the percent dollars increase or decrease. In 2011, we saw a large cut of $350,000, or about a 4.5% decrease. Last 2012, we saw a 1.32% increase. Last year, we saw a 2.75% increase, and this year, we're seeing a 2.11% increase. Just restating the numbers in a different way, as we have previously discussed. Continued use of debt service or bond proceeds to retire debt. 2011, 12, and 13 Main Street renovation project bond principal payments were paid out of project funds. This is also budgeted in 2014, which reduces the amount to be raised by taxes by $61,166 in this year. And the Reddington Street Bridge project, the principal payment will be paid out of project funds. However, in 2014, there is only enough left to pay for a portion of the principal from the balance of the project funds, which will reduce the amount to be raised by taxes by $22,000 a year. This chart pictorially shows that if we drop down to 2014, you can see the $61,000 for Main Street. You can see the $22,000 that we have for the Reddington Street Bridge, so that's an $83,000 savings, which is going to reduce taxes by about 10 cents. But if you look at 2015, none of that money is available next year. So those project funds will be tapped out after this year. Looking at the default budget, some of the key changes from the default budget from the 2013 operating budget. There are no wage adjustments for non-union employees. The New Hampshire retirement system has seen cost increases. The general staff, it's up 0.98%, so now it's a total of 10.77%. Police is up 2.67%, now a total of 25.3%. Firemen's up 2.42%, now 27.74%. Additional election expenses, poll workers, ballots, counting machines. We have 4 elections this year, including the first one tomorrow. And then we have town meeting, and then we have the 2 fall elections. We were, however, able to significantly reduce legal expenses by about 30%. Workers' compensation insurance, we see a credit reduction from the lawsuit, so we're actually getting less money back from that, which requires us to raise an extra $15,000. We have decreased computer expenses, and that we purchased a new vision server last year. The Whitefield Airport is seeking a $3,000 increase, suggesting that they have not charged us their actual costs for the past few years, and that this does reflect their actual costs. That's a contractual obligation. The county dispatch, another contractual obligation, is up $15,000. That's broken into 2 sections, a 4% in their general cost increase, but then a 7.5% increase in general increased utilization, meaning that we're a bigger portion of their overall activity. Ambulance costs are down 1.3%. We have an increase in the Public Works Administration in that the DPW director is now working 40 hours a week. That had not been budgeted in the previous year. And a $25,000 reduction in the Highway Department as the backhoe lease was paid off. We're seeing a $7,000 increase to the transfer station, really miscellaneous costs, including health insurance, and a $3,000 decrease in debt service, just that we paid off more principal. These next slides, I don't plan on spending much time on, but they do encapsulate what is happening with health insurance, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance, and property liability. And if you have one of the handouts, you can read that, and please contact us with any questions you may have.
Bruce Hadlock, it was just on the news here that the LGC in turn announced the amount of money that they were paying back to the towns as a cost of $50 million on it. And that was broken down, if I'm not mistaken, because we've been watching this thing for the last couple of years, knowing that this lawsuit was here. The LGC, number one, spent $2 million of our taxpayers' money fighting it on it, as far as that part, which is kind of like a sin. That's taking our own money, fighting ourselves to pay ourselves back on it. And consequently, the amount of money that came back in here, part of it, if I'm not correct, is your health insurance. And where your people in turn pay into the health insurance program, they're all going to be getting a check back too, am I correct?
They have.
They have already got it.
They have got some money back.
And how much did the people in the town of Littleton receive back?
We received a holiday credit, so our health insurance was less than in the monthly bill than what we normally would have paid. And we also took in $25,000 in the general fund to help reduce the amount that was needed from taxes. That was part of our revenues this last year.
So what you've got basically was money that they had overcharged on the liability, the fire insurance, et cetera. That was the $25,000?
It was a combination of everything. It was a combination of health insurance and...
Yeah, health insurance has to be broken down separately, doesn't it? You can't just put that back in the general fund.
The health insurance had to be broken down by departments, and it had to be broken down by employees.
So the people got their money back too?
Yes, and the library and any other entity that's part of the town's health insurance.
So how much did the town get altogether?
Altogether, the
And I'm not
health
talking about the
insurance,
school either.
the health insurance credit was about $75,000.
Right.
The property liability credit was $25,000.
Again, I'm not on top of it to look at it, but I know, and this was initiated by Portsmouth, I think it was, and a bunch of other towns out of it from that part. It sounds like a very small amount of money on the basis of $50 million that we're getting. Have you asked for an audit as to see whether we got it correct or not?
Well, we got some the previous year that was just a health insurance credit. We also, for Primex, got back a credit on our premium, on our workers' comp premium. Over the last 2 years, $33,000 a year for 2 years.
Right.
This year, we predict there'll be about a $10,000 credit back.
I watched this Primex and what they do. We had a town manager here a couple of years ago in turn who took the job of being on the board of directors. This is how Primex works. They put everybody on the board of directors from every single town, every single county, so that they in turn get people to in turn don't question anything and just put the bills on here. And the people were getting. I actually told the last town manager that he had a conflict of interest out of the thing on, because he was only on the workman's compensation. And he couldn't understand why. Because the fact of what they were doing was they want you to just don't question it, bill them, and put it on there, and they're putting all these people on to turn around and just control what they get and keep the money rolling through the door under Primex. And I don't know whether we have anybody in Littleton that's on it now, but we've had numerous amounts of people throughout the state that are in these towns and counties that are all been put on their boards out of the thing on it. And I think it's a conflict of interest on what they're doing out of the thing on it. In fact, because I'm not even convinced that we should not do something other than going through Primex. It's not the best thing in the world out of it either. But towns historically have not had good loss ratios on it, whether it's workman's comp, or general liability, or anything else on it. And I also think you should be reforming the health insurance out of it on it to how you adapt it to what you do in here too, especially with what's going on in the government. It's not necessarily the best thing on behalf of the consumer, and certainly not necessarily the best thing that's happening on what you're getting out of it on behalf of the taxpayer too. And some of the ones, and I hate to use you as an example, but we're paying people like yourself who don't take the program huge amounts of money, and it shouldn't be. This has just gotten out of whack, and you're not studying correctly. I happened to be in Fred's office the other day, and if any of you got a telephone book, you ought to look at it. And a telephone book, in turn, talks about your telephones and how many telephones the town of Littleton has, from the top to the bottom. And if you looked at it, you could probably do away with it. And I noticed in his thing in here that we're paying the county, and they keep asking for more money. We probably could fund our whole operations by reforming the telephone system out of the thing on it in the town of Littleton and using it. We've got thousands, but we've got a tremendous amount of telephone numbers, everything from the fire to the police to the parks, to everybody's got a phone in the town of Littleton. And it just, I think in today's technology, that thing should be cut back and saved an awful lot, and especially with what you're doing down through Grafton County. Thank you.
The other side of building a budget is the revenue side. And I'm going to drop back to last year. 2013 revenues were just up to reflect increased revenue from motor vehicle registrations, permits, fees, town property rental, and insurance refunds, something we were just talking about. The area with the largest reduction was the highway block grant and the rooms and meals tax. However, in 2014, we're estimating revenues are going to be down slightly due to lower state aid expectations, as well as transfer station revenues are down due to reduced recycling volumes, reduced value of recycled products, and uncertain grant revenues in that department. The Parks and Recreation Department will reflect a decrease in revenues due to them not using their fund balance for projects. So here's a summary chart of the revenues. You can see taxes, not property, up slightly, doing okay on motor vehicle registrations. Permits, license, and fees is relatively flat. But other state revenue, we're saying it's going to go down. Other departmental income, Parks and Recreation, as well as transfer station revenues. So while we budgeted about 2.9 million last year, we're in the 2.8 range this year. This is a summary chart of all of the departments on your grand budget summary. Here again, everything in red is showing a decrease, and arguably that's a good thing, in that these departments are not anticipated to spend as much in 2014 as we had budgeted in 2013. With legal carrying this one, we're down about $35,000 on that line estimate. This is the second half of the operating budget, showing the highway department down about $24,000. Public Works Administration is up. As I mentioned, that reflects having the full year, or a full 40-hour-a-week employee. Police Department is up 8%, and we just talked about dispatch being up about 9%. We'll go into explaining some of these in a minute. Outside agencies, library, Parks and Rec, that's a total of 4% for those two. Debt service is down about $3,000, and then the enterprise funds. Parking meter expenses, we're showing that will be up, and that we're adding some staff and some hours for the parking meter review. And the sewer uses operating costs, that's for the wastewater treatment plant. Their contract is tied to the CPI, so we'll be paying them 1% more. Okay, here's the detail on each one of the departments. General government, it's all of the second floor offices downtown, cemeteries, insurance, welfare, patriotic and conservation. So we're seeing that the percent from the 2013 to 2014 default is down 1.79%, and the percent change of the proposed to the default is up 1.2. This reflects a 2.5% pay administration adjustment for administrative staff, $800 increase to cover select board out-of-pocket expenses. We talked about the extra election in 2014. Tax collecting office expenses are down slightly. The assessing budget is down primarily due to fewer legal abatement challenges anticipated. The welfare budget is level funded, and the Conservation Commission budget is down $1,500. Legal, we talked about that being down considerably. The reason for that is TransCanada. We were able to stabilize that agreement for 2 more years until 2015, when the townwide revaluation occurs. However, we still do have challenges from other utilities, DirecTV, New England Electric, Fairpoint, and Public Service, and ongoing, plus other residential, commercial, and exempt property assessments. Police Department, 2013 to default is 4.9%, and then 2.85% up from previously. That reflects the wage increase under the union agreement, 2.5%, plus health insurance plan changes. Firearm replacement costs are down. We're adding 3 hours to the part-time office assistant in April that will be shared with the parking meter enforcement. We've added an active shooter training program, more comprehensive computer services, and it's time to seal coat the parking lot, resupply first aid kits, replace supplies, ammunition, and dual band radio program. Fire and rescue, we're seeing the up 0.92% from 2013, and then the proposed is 0.4% up over the default. We're seeing reduced costs for training, data processing, electricity, sewer and vehicle maintenance. We did level fund the heating cost. Even though we anticipate the pellet boiler saving money, you'll see in the highway department we did drop that. But with the added activity level at the fire station and the uncertain cost for the pellet boiler this first year of operating, we level funded that. We have increased costs of uniforms, emergency reporting contract, building maintenance dues, and additional turnout gear for the call company recruits and the Tomar traffic signal equipment. There is a new budget line this year for $1,000 that we hadn't had previously, and that's to cover the cost of reimbursing other area departments with brush fire response calls, such as we experienced up on Girard Road wildfire last spring.
Did you get paid back for that? Forest fires are paid back by the state of New Hampshire. Did you get your money?
Yes.
You did? So why are we appropriating money into that particular part of it?
Because we had to pay the other departments, and we had gross appropriation, so even if we have revenue, we still have to budget for the expense.
So you're anticipating if we have another one, you're putting it in the budget, but necessarily if we don't have a forest fire, you're not going to spend it.
That's correct.
But you do collect from the state of New Hampshire out of it. That's built in where they pay if there's a forest fire. They do that on every town.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Ambulance and dispatch service, up 5.5% from previous year for the default, and then up a little less than 0.5% from the default to the proposed. As we talked about before, Grafton County Dispatch was reduced. The budget was reduced in 2013, but now they increased in 2014 by $15,000. So that's a net increase of $4,000 over the last 2 years. We've eliminated the dedicated radio line, and the ambulance line has been decreased by $1,200, reflecting the second year of the ambulance contract with Calix. Highway Department, 0.37% over 2013, and then we're seeing a decrease from the proposed to the default of 0.25%. DPW supervisor budgeted at 40 hours. Now we're seeing the decrease in fuel costs of $4,000 to the Highway Department due to the pellet boiler. The backhoe was paid off, saving $15,000. And we completed grinding an additional 7,000 yards of gravel for 2014-2015 road improvement projects. This has been a real boon to the department with having that material available to them. So we anticipate continuing that into the future.
Question. Under your pellet boiler out of it, are you taking the labor that it takes to go over there and sweep that thing or clean it? Is that budgeted in here? Or are you looking like as a $4,000 savings or whatever it is? And are you talking the labor that you have to go over and clean it?
The labor is extremely minimal. Once a month, they go over for half, three-quarters of an hour. Twice a month, George, okay.
Two man hours a month.
2 man hours a month.
So are you applying that towards the cost of the heat? You can't usually say it's a savings if you're taking it out of one hand and putting it in the other without managing it correctly.
We haven't budgeted separately for the maintenance of that because it is such a minimal expense.
At this stage of the game, before, depending on how old and whether it's maintained and dealing with it. But it's still extra, that's all. Because I know they kept telling us we're going to get this savings. Well, if you're having man hours to go over there and taking it out of the town garage of the highway department, that's not necessarily a savings that you'd saved on oil.
Well, that was one of the reasons we decided against some kind of a chunk boiler for the highway department, because there would be significant staff time associated with that. This is pretty much a fully automated system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Transfer station recycling, they're up 1.9% over previous year, and the proposed is down slightly from the default. With reduced training, telephone, water, sewer dues, and equipment maintenance, shingle disposal, and transportation costs. Those are all down. Increased fuel costs. We discussed that earlier in that there's less used motor oil coming into the transfer station to burn, so they have to purchase more to keep the place heated. And they need to print up receipts for the public, and they have increased free end disposal costs. And the one part-time position has been included in the budget this year. Debt service, and we talked about that previously, but it's down 0.25%, reflecting paying off some loans, and there's no change between the proposed and the default. Here again, this is a simplified spreadsheet, but it shows that in 2014 we will be paying off the landfill, so we won't have to pay that $133,000, and we'll have paid off the fire truck, and that's another $87,000. So it will be an overall decrease of $235,000 in 2014. Outside board funds, library, parks, and recreation. We're seeing a 0.35% decrease from the previous year, and then the proposed is up 4.1% over the default. Library, we're seeing retirement cost increases for the library, but a decrease in building maintenance expenses. They will have an increase in book repair costs using memorial funds, and the overall increase in the library budget is 1.1%. Parks and Rec, seeing increase in fuel oils, groundskeeping, pool painting, and recreational programming. A decrease in the summer program, but an overall increase of 5.9%. The enterprise funds, the Opera House, Police Department, outside special detail, parking meters, and wastewater treatment plant. Opera House is down slightly. The police detail is relatively stable. Parking meters, we're seeing an increase in the parking meters, reflecting additional staff coverage. And the wastewater treatment plant, we said that was a CPI contract, so that's a 1% increase. On the Opera House, property liability insurance decrease. Outside special detail, we had a high utilization in 2013, so a little budget change for 2014. Parking meters, we're increasing the enforcement officer from 20 to 30 hours per week. The Green Street lot lease was converted into a loan, and the fees are used to maintain the meters, sidewalks, and streets. And we added 3 hours to admin, police department admin, to assist the enforcement officer with those extra hours. So the summary sheet on this is that just for the operating budget in 2013, that translated to $6.40 tax rate. 2014 default is $6.59. I think perhaps I said $6.60 previously. This is just a rounding difference. And then the proposed budget is $6.68. Add the war service credits and overlay, similar to last year. So we may see a 2.77% increase and a 3.9% increase for the proposed. And if you have a median home value of $153,600, that may be a tax impact of $41.47. That's all based upon the revenues decreasing by 82. Remember I said we had 2.9 million in revenues in 2013. We're saying that those are going to be down slightly, but staff's goal is to try and make those revenues increase. From where we sit today, we just can't predict that is going to happen. Yes, Bruce.
You paid off that, I call it that monstrosity loan that was prepared with the town of Littleton for that little teeny piece of property behind the Littleton Diner, and we have since paid it off. Wasn't part of that being paid for by the parking meters?
Karen?
It is paid for by the parking meters.
Right.
If you look at the parking meter budget, the payment for that is part of that parking meter budget.
So that should be less money on the basis of what we have to allocate, or it's not allocated because it comes in from the meter fund, but they shouldn't have that outlay of money.
It's the same amount of money payment per year, just slightly more. It was the payment's $23,175.
Is it? It's on the bond.
On the, I call it a loan, but
Yeah,
a bond.
Loan the bond.
For a shorter period of time, and that does come out of the parking meter fund. But when we talk about the debt and show you the overall picture of the debt,
Yeah.
we include that as part of our debt because it is town
It's
debt.
still debt, right?
But it does come out of the parking meter budget. If you look at your proposed budget that you received up at the front table,
Right.
you look in parking meters, you're going to see a line that shows that money.
So it's still offsetting. Well, how long a period of time was that for? I can't remember.
I'll get you that answer.
That's fine. The other one that I was, back as I remember it, the parking meter fund, and somebody's going to have to prove it to me otherwise, but I believe when it was initially put into the town, it was back in the late 40s or early 50s out of it. it was put in, and it was only to be used for additional off-street parking. It wasn't to be able to be hiring help to the police department to administer it, or in which we don't have any control over. And consequently, yes, you have somebody that's collecting money out of it, but the actual money itself, as far as I don't think we ever had any changes in anything by a vote of the people pertaining to it that I'm aware of. And that money is only supposed to be used to enhance the additional of parking, off-street parking for the, basically, I should say, the main street or anywhere relative to where you're expanding it, but buying different parking spaces. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that they might have used some of that also for not, and maybe it's wrong in what they were doing too, because it said acquiring. But when you, like the town of Littleton has used the parking spaces behind the community center. And there's a contract basically that says that you plow it. And it used to be the same way down behind the bank. It said if they plow it, the fact that they could use them. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the past, that they might have used some of that money also to repave some of those things as a parking lot that they were given to maintain.
I was looking up your
Yeah,
information.
well, I'm just making a statement out of it, because I'm not so positive that there's a misuse of some of the funds that have been going along for years out of it as to what the original intent of what that was for.
Bruce, let me read the statement
Yeah.
to you from the 1947 vote. Voted that the town will authorize its Board of Selectmen to purchase and install on Main Street in said Littleton parking meters for the regulation of parking on the said street, and the revenue resulting from the operation and use of said meters to be used to finance the purchase, maintenance, and policing of the said meters, or to maintain and improve streets and highways in the town, or to acquire, construct, improve, maintain, and manage public parking areas. That's the whole paragraph.
The parking lot that's directly behind the movie theater was acquired from that money. That was acquired from the Eames family. And then the other parking lot that goes all the way out there to where the old fabric care building is, that was acquired with that money too, and did it back at that time, too.
I actually have your answer to the financing. We had on that lease that we were paying for, we had a remaining amount of 18 years and 9 months. We financed that and purchased that property and eliminated that lease. We went for a 10-year loan on that at 1.79% for the first 5 years. The payment is roughly $23,175. We were paying $21,367, and we were paying an interest rate of 6.82% on that lease.
No, I was an advocate of paying it off. There's no question about that, to get rid of it, because somebody made a terrible mistake when they entered into it. Thank you.
So that loan is paid off in 2023, right, Karen?
Yes.
Article 7, collective bargaining agreement between the Board of Selectmen and the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees to see if the town will vote to approve the cost item included in the 3-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Board of Selectmen and the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Council 93, Local 1348, which calls for the following increases in salary benefit at the current staffing level. Year 1, 2014, $9,820. Year 2, 2015, $6,211. Year 3, 2016, $3,455. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $9,820 for the current fiscal year, such sum representing additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels paid in the prior fiscal year. Pursuant to RSA 273-A, Section 12, if approved, the terms of this collective bargaining agreement, including the pay plan but excluding cost of living increases, will continue in full force and effect until a new agreement is executed. Recommended by the Budget Committee 6-1, recommended by the Selectmen 3-0. Tax impact of 1.3 cents for the first year. Summary of the changes for the fire department employees. The regular work week for the fire department employees will be 48 hours per week if funds are available. No overtime will be paid for regular hours worked until 48 hours are worked. Note the first 3 hours of callback are at straight time as well. The chief or his designee will be able to cover shifts with more flexibility following certain procedures. Leave time accruals for new hires have decreased along with maximum accruals. Highway department employees, from mid-November, from November to April, only one employee will be able to opt out from being on call. Daily on-call hours during the work week is 6:30 a.m. One day to 6:30 a.m. the next morning. A stipend of $10 for each day for 2 employees from April to October is now $25 per day for 1 employee. Pager calls must be returned within 10 minutes. Leave time accruals for new hires have decreased, and a $500 stipend for New Hampshire Academy, Public Works Academy 1 and 2 has been eliminated. For all 3 employees, department employees, highway, transfer, and fire, town manager is able to rehire employees up to step 4 and place them at the leave time accrual rate they were at when they left. Memorial Day is now defined as Memorial Day, observed on Monday. Employees will only be paid double time and a half for work performed on Thanksgiving and Christmas. In the previous contract, this included New Year's Day. The driver health insurance plan will change from Blue Choice Tier 2 two-tier plan with no deductible to an HMO plan with $250 deductible per person. The employees will be paying 2.5% of the premium the first year, 7.5% the second year, and 12.5% the third year. The buyout for people who are insured elsewhere is going from $5,743 to $5,000 in the first year, $4,000 in the second year, and $3,000 in the third year. Wage increase schedules are 2%. Wage increase schedules are 2% in the first year, no step, 2.5% step increase in the second year, and 2% no step in the third year. All employees who require a CDL for their position will receive the difference between the CDL and the regular license fee. And this is just another slide talking about what I just included. The bottom line there, I think, perhaps says if you add the 3-year contract together, the average cost per year is $6,495, or less than 1% or less than 1 cent on the tax rate each year.
Yeah, Fred, just a quick question. Is it still appropriate to use cost of living terminology? I thought that
Did I say
verbiage
cost of
was
living?
taken out of the contract.
Up there it does say cost of living, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Might want to change that.
Yeah.
Around the country, they're having on these contracts where people are putting in for retirement programs and stuff like this on it. And I don't know if there's any relevance to what they're doing, but I've been watching it. And a lot of these people that are doing things, I don't know, against the law maybe, or getting caught, or taking money, or anything of this nature on it, they're getting found guilty on it. And specifically, there's a tremendous amount of people all across the country that have been taking money out of town. This goes on, it's been going back 25 years out of it. I would like to see someplace in the negotiations out of it that says that if any of this money in turn, if these people get convicted of any offense pertaining to these particular items, that their retirement cannot be collected or cannot be paid to them. To give you an example, if you happen to get arrested for doing something, in the federal government will not pay any of your Social Security to anybody that's in prison. Why should we in turn be, let's put an incentive to stop some of these people from doing some of these things on it by saying to them that their retirement is in jeopardy if they get convicted of any felonies or any of these other things that seem to be going on, that they would lose their retirement. And I don't know whether you could put that into your negotiations, but I'm a firm believer in that, because we watched somebody over in New York State out of it. He's in jail for 20 years, and he's collecting $100,000 a year out of the retirement program. But I think that we should be putting something in here to deter these people from something of that nature on it, and making it so they can't get the compensation out of it. I only mention that to you, that I know you're always in negotiations now and then. Thank you.
Article 8. Article 8, special town meeting. Shall the town of Littleton, if Article 7 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special town meeting at its option to address Article 7 cost items only. Recommended by the selectmen, 3-0. The budget committee has not acted on this article yet, with no tax impact. I think it's just what it says, that should the previous collective bargaining agreement fail, the selectmen, with a positive vote here, can call a special town meeting. Article 9, expanded fire station coverage. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $34,075 for the purpose of expanded hours of staff coverage at the fire station for up to 18 additional hours per week during weekends. The actual cost for the expanded hours is $38,400. With expanded coverage, there will be a reduction in overtime expense and call-out cost of $4,325. Not recommended by the Budget Committee, 6-2. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. Tax impact of 4.5 cents. Well, did you want to talk to this one?
In terms of the hours. A few years ago, as I think you all know, there was a survey done in town asking the residents about the services that the town renders. And there was an overwhelming vote of support for having the fire station open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As you know, there was a reduction in coverage a few years ago following a reduction in money coming in. And the negotiations that we had with the fire department spoke to this issue 2 years in a row. And so we've come up with a recommendation here, which is not part of the contract, but as I think Fred has outlined, it impacts on the contract if it's passed. Clearly, we would like to see the fire station open and manned and staffed full-time all the time. Everybody agrees to that. The issue here is money and cost, and so what we came up with was a recommendation to at least add an element of time, and at the same time address overtime, impacting it in a positive way by reducing the amount of overtime that would have to be spent by having a staffing arrangement through the Saturday hours till sometime on Sunday morning. It's tied to another part of the contract, which has to do with the ability to assign people to hours of work. And we negotiated that and worked that out to everybody's appreciation and also agreement as to how the chief and the senior staff would be calling people in. And clearly the budget committee, a few of the members who talked to me later thought that this was a way for the full-time fire staff to get more overtime. Clearly that's not what we spoke to the night we met with the budget committee, but perhaps we weren't clear on that. This is regular straight time. This is not an overtime situation. There are 4 levels of staff to be called in, and I won't get into the specifics of that except to say that it's full-time staff being asked first, and then part-time staff, and then call company personnel, which is a separate category, and then your least experienced people being brought in. And there's possibility of overtime in that situation, but it's 4 levels down. So this is extending our time, extending it on regular work hours, and if this is triggered and passed, then the full-time staff goes to 48 hours a week. Yes, Bruce?
I'm aware of the fact that you've gone to the, was it 48 hours? That's a state law that was passed by the state of New Hampshire, that you can ask firemen to work 48 hours before they get overtime.
No. Let me give you the survey on this.
I didn't ask for the survey, I'm asking about the state of New Hampshire law.
No, there is no law.
You sure of that?
No, I'm sure of it. It's in the National Labor Relations Act of 1936. It's a recommendation by the federal government that fire departments work 53 hours a week as a regular work week. And what I did for the survey last summer, I went online. There are 29 contracts that are online that have been negotiated in the state, and there's only 2 communities that are at 48. No one's at 53. Wyndham, and there's one other community that has a 48-hour work week. We would be the 3rd community going to 48 hours on 29 negotiated agreements. So
well, the other one that I get concerned about, I've heard from other people, and I don't know this for a fact or not, but from what I've been told, is that if you have more firemen on duty, then you come under federal laws. And federal laws demand that you pay more. Whether you add it in employees or pay, I don't know. But I would hope that you're in turn aware of those things if they're true, that you're not falling us into a position of adding people on and getting us under these federal laws that says we have so many employees or so many people and it's going to cost us more, because they're going to throw it back in your face that says the federal government, because they take preference over the town and the state. Only thing that the state does is if they have more empowered ones, if they have higher ones than the federal. So if you put something in here that's going to affect us on these federal laws, the thing on it, you could be really doing an injustice to us.
I've not heard that, Bruce.
Well, I'm not telling you to hear it, I'm telling you to check it out and make sure.
And one comment before I go with my question. What the hell is the federal government involved in firefighting? There's nothing in the Constitution about that. That's my comment. Question is, you mentioned a survey, and you said it was an overwhelming survey. Do you know how many people responded to the survey, and what the percentage of the people who responded were for this?
Oh, the local survey? Yeah, 2 years ago we did a referendum survey of voters, and it came out just over 60% preferred a full-time 24/7 coverage at the fire department.
Right. How many people responded to that survey? Is that known?
It was by far the majority of the people voting.
Okay, because as I mentioned just earlier here, there was an overwhelming majority, and that's in quotes, who voted for the pellet system, 68%. That only represented less than 11% of the total population of the town.
Yeah, Ron, well, of course, everybody has the opportunity to come and vote. One question on this. I'm a little distressed that the Budget Committee so soundly is not supporting this article. I'm wondering if the explanation was adequate, and if not, perhaps it could be expanded at the deliberative session. We're talking about $34,000, and I guess that's for 9 months, so it'll be a little bit more for a full year. But as I look through this, there's almost $2 million in warrant articles being proposed. And here we're asking for $34,000 to have a fire station manned on the weekends. To me, this should be a no-brainer. Just not a question.
I can answer that to the extent that when this article was first presented to the Budget Committee, it was for the full first year cost, and that was going to be $45,000. Since it would not be implemented until April, it would be 9 months, and that dropped the number. So we will be taking this back to the Budget Committee when they meet the day after tomorrow, and perhaps they'll reconsider their support for it. Article 10, life, disability, and income protection insurance benefits for call or part-time firefighters. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $8,000 for the purpose of providing life and disability and lost wage insurance coverage for the call or part-time firefighters. This appropriation will encompass life insurance, disability, and lost wages benefits only. If this article passes, benefits will automatically be included in future budgets. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 8-0. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. Tax impact of about a penny.
Not that it will change things much, but that recommended by Budget Committee is now 7-1.
The purpose of this is we rely very heavily on our call company, part-time firefighters, for services, and as a recruitment and retention tool, a number of them have mentioned that other departments provide this coverage, and they would like to have Littleton provide it also. A detail of that is 24-hour accidental death and dismemberment insurance for volunteer and call members. That premium is $454 a year. Group term life insurance for volunteers and call members, a premium of $39.45. And then accident and health insurance for volunteers and call members for covered activities, that is $3,260. So the total premium is a little less than $8,000 based upon the census. We rounded it up to $8,000 with the idea that there may be some changes or addition to personnel in the call company.
Bruce Hadlock. I don't like to keep standing up here, but the state of New Hampshire just passed a law on it that said, and they did this because there was some of the volunteer firemen in turn had suddenly started to sue people when they were called out on a fire. And they would slip and fall on the ice, and then they were suing the people. Well, the union from the fire department union went to bat for and said they didn't think that they should be allowed to sue anybody that they go to a premises and slip and fall. It's like telling somebody you have to have your property all sanded around your house when the fireman shows up to do it. So they went back and passed this law. But there's a law on the books that says that all volunteers in the state of New Hampshire, other than people who work on churches, are required to have them provide workman's compensation on it for them.
That is correct.
Okay?
When we do provide that.
And you're providing that services out of the thing on it. So are they getting more on a volunteer basis than the actual firemen are?
The question of more, I don't know that I can answer that.
Well, I mean, you should be looking at it under those grounds. Again, I know you've got another meeting, but I think you should be looking at it. I don't think we should be going and giving the volunteers, I'm not trying to take it away from them, but I'm trying to also say that we shouldn't be providing it and paying on more and giving them more than the actual firemen are getting out of it from the point of the services, because your workman's compensation allows you for a death benefit. And on a federal level, it also provides for people on a death benefit pertaining to it for that part. And also the fact that they can get compensated for lost wages out of the thing on it as well under that part. And this all stemmed because somebody got hurt up on Mount Washington a number of years ago, and they had a bunch of volunteers who went up to save somebody, and the person got mangled and got hurt at night up there. So the person didn't have any insurance out of the thing on it and went to save these people. And when they did, they went back to the legislature and they passed a law retroactively to be able to protect anybody that's on a volunteer basis. So these volunteers are covered under workman's comp, and you should be looking at those laws and rules and regulations as to what these people get paid, because they're going to get paid probably, and not just the compensation that they're getting from the town, would because they're volunteers, they're probably going to pay them on the basis of what they would normally get. Or either that, or you should back it up to compensate it on an equal basis out of it. But you need to do some more homework before you put this thing together. Thank you.
Dan, did this not have something to do with in case, in other words, volunteer firefighters are employed at a job for their life's work, and when they volunteer and they get hurt, if they are laid up and they aren't able to get their normal
Primary income.
Yeah, that this would cover that, and
That is partially the purpose of this.
That's what we're...
Does workman's comp cover that?
It does, but not to the extent that these policies do. These are much healthier and I believe would provide that recruitment and retention benefit that we've been asked for. Article 11, reconstructing, repaving, and upgrading various town roads. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate an amount not to exceed $430,243 for the purpose of designing, engineering, paving, and upgrading various town roads and sewer systems related to those roads. High Street, East End, Park Ave to Pleasant Street, estimated cost $174,194, with $121,000 coming from the sewer replacement connection and sewer restricted fund balances. Carlton Street, estimated cost $152,260, with $96,000 coming from sewer replacement connection and sewer restricted fund balance. Partridge Lake 2, which is the Parker Camp to Herrick Road, estimated cost of $54,396. Brook Road, Reddington Street to Littleton Town Line, estimated cost of $49,393. Any savings seen during these projects will be used for and expended on crushing and recycling old pavement for use on these and other various town roads. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 5-3. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. Tax impact of 28 cents. What I have here are some details as to what's involved in those projects. High Street, you've got reclaiming, pavement, catch basin, sewer reconstruction, stormwater reconstruction. Carlton Street, you've got reclaim, pavement, manholes, catch basins, sewer reconstruction, stormwater reconstruction. Partridge Lake, reclaim, crushed gravel, ditching, culvert headers, and pavement. And Brook Road, reclaim, crushed gravel, raised manholes, pavement, and ditching. Article 12, purchase of police cruiser. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum.
On those things, how many of them are Class 5 roads, and are you getting reimbursed for any money on them?
We get reimbursed for all our Class 5 roads.
That's right. So you've got some money that's coming in for revenue to offset some parts of what you have. So I've used Patrick Lake, the camp, consequently. I don't know that all of them are Class 5 roads, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's listed as a Class 5 road. So you are getting reimbursed some of that actual money.
From the highway block grant.
From the highway block grants that come in on any rural roads out that are under Class 5s. So you should tell that to the people, or put it into your budgeting so everybody understands it.
Purchase of a police cruiser. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $37,500 for the purpose of purchasing and setup of a 2014 or newer police cruiser as a replacement for an older cruiser in service in the Littleton Police Department, and to authorize the use of $37,500 to come from the undesignated unreserved fund balance, and to further authorize the selectmen to trade in or sell an older cruiser. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 6-2. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0, with no tax impact. Upgrade and, or Article 13, upgrade and update of police cruiser safety communications equipment. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,000 for the purpose of purchasing, installing, improving police cruisers with updated safety and communications equipment, and to authorize the withdrawal of $11,000 from the special detail revenue fund, and to further authorize the police chief to trade in or sell older equipment. Recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0, recommended by the Selectmen 3-0, with no tax impact. Article 14, sale of town property. Shall the Board of Selectmen be authorized without further town meeting action to subdivide, exchange, or sell the following town property, including development rights, after 2 duly noticed public hearings and in consultation with the Town Planning Board and Conservation Commission in accordance with RSA 41, Section 11-4A. 1213 Mount Eustace Road, map 99, lot 17, partial vacant land, old gravel pit for industrial development. Perhaps some of you have heard about this, been approached by the LIDC, Local Industrial Development Corporation, about their inability to accept some possible industrial businesses that have expressed an interest in locating in the park. They have little land available, and the lots that they do have available are relatively small. We own an 85-acre parcel that the transfer station is currently located on. The transfer station only occupies the front 6 to 8 acres, with a large area up behind the transfer station of the Littleton Coin Company that is available for development. The town at one time had that slated for a replacement landfill when the Industrial Park Road landfill closed. That didn't happen, and I don't foresee that happening. So I don't see the rear portion of the transfer station parcel as having any foreseeable use for the town. And if the Development Corporation can find an industry that's going to invest and create jobs there, I think that would be in the best interest of the town. Can I just get through this, Bruce?
Yeah, go ahead.
Meadow Street, Littleton Southern number 1, that was acquired by tax sale, floodplain and wetland mitigation. Industrial Park Road, Littleton Southern number 2, 8.7 acres, that was also acquired through tax sale, floodplain, steep slope mitigation. Those 2 parcels are to the north and east of Walmart. They were originally part of that development. The town, they were subdivided off because they had no inherent value, generally floodplain and wetland. The town acquired them, and if we could sell them for match property or for wetland mitigation property for other development projects, that would allow those other projects to proceed. And then 354 Pleasant Street is a small 0.21 acre parcel that we acquired through tax sale, a manufactured housing lot up on Pleasant Street across from Gary's Drive that we may be able to use and in negotiating with other landowners in town to help with the River District project. This has not been reviewed by the Budget Committee yet. The Selectmen recommended 3-0, and it has no tax impact. So with that.
I happen to, again, I don't know what this thing works on, but I happened to go up and see Fred the other day, and talking about the 85 acres of land, and the people of Littleton should have a little history on that. This land in turn was bought and sold to us by a guy by the name of Ray Little, who was a logger. He felt that the town of Littleton should have it basically for the sand and gravel that was on the property left over on the basis of logging. He proposed that he sell that property to the town of Littleton for $25,000. And the fact that the town entered in and voted to do so had paid for it $5,000 a year for 5 years. That's how we happened to get the property out of it. from that part. So I'm a believer in the fact that there's possibly nothing wrong with making a change in giving some of the property. I don't think I should use the word give it, but selling the property to the Littleton Industrial Park. I served on that industrial board. When we were there, the townspeople of Littleton, in turn, have put in over $300,000 of our own money in developing the roads, the sewage, and the constructing them down through there in the past. The first initial piece of property that was ever sold there was sold to Burndy, and it was 20 acres, and we got $50,000 for it. And I think that if, in fact, that the industrial people, in turn, still should sell it, but I think that the townspeople should get reimbursed money from the point of what it would be, at least equal to what we have invested in it. Or, I tried to find out today by calling the town, and they weren't open. Every piece of property in the town of Littleton has a value placed on it by your tax people. And they weren't open, so I couldn't find out to bring it to you as far as that part. But consequently, if they're going to, there's no question it costs money to build roads into them and developing them, but consequently, our people in turn have, in the community, put up the money to buy this, and we should be getting reimbursed as far as that part, as far as monies are concerned. The industrial park, when I was on there, that's how we operated as far as building the thing, charging the people. Some of the things that we put in there on it, there was a lot of restrictions in there out of it, and we should have to say that the same restrictions apply that they put in on the industrial basis of what they had to do. So I'm not a believer in giving it to them. The town of Littleton, in turn, on an industrial basis, we own our own water and light department, and we have the cheapest electric rates almost in the state of New Hampshire. And that in itself is a huge subsidized figure to anybody that owns a business, myself included, on the thing on it. And consequently, we should in turn, we are subsidizing everybody. And from what I understand, one of their customers is a person who wants to, I didn't say person, or a business who wants to expand within the park out of it and go further. But we're subsidizing every single one of those people to get them to work here. And we're getting probably 35 or 40% of them are coming from out of state. And some of these people that are buying in the industrial park are not even members of the United States out of it. The town of Littleton just went and entered into one contract with them about a year ago to buy equipment through a grant that they got from Grafton County on it. We're subsidizing other countries to do some of these things. And I think that you should, at least if you're going to sell it, get the money back on the basis of a sale to what the people have invested in this. It's not in good taste for me to go and give it to the industrial park people, to give it to somebody else, or to sell it to somebody else, and then they profit out of it. The industrial group out of it have always made their money by either getting it monies. We got some monies from the federal government, but most of the time, our monies that we've gotten from either the sale of the land that we got, we purchased it, we sold off a tremendous amount of gravel to do the interstate highway over on it, as far as that part, but I'm not convinced that what you got it laid out to be on the basis of what you're doing without selling it to them. That would be one.
Bruce, my understanding is that the parcel that the little coin company was originally part of the town property.
Could be, yeah.
Do you know what the town was reimbursed for that parcel?
No, I don't.
It was nothing.
Yeah. I can remember they...
Mr. Ward says nothing.
No, I think that they purchased it.
Okay.
I think they paid for it as far as that part.
Town voted to transfer.
No?
Town voted to transfer it.
I'm not aware of it anyway. The other one that I just saw, which I didn't know you had on here, was that parcel that's down by the Walmart. At what point did the townspeople accept that, as far as the land was concerned?
It was a tax sale.
No, there was a tax property down there, and they paid the taxes up on the property out of it, because I hired Mr. Ward to look into it. and we did look into it as far as the property was concerned, because it could have been purchased down there, and I thought it could be mitigated or used on it for other purposes. It's not just one parcel of land, it's two. One of them was the 11-acre parcel, and then there was another one across the river that Ken Curran negotiated with them to sell, and it was sold by Curran so that they could mitigate to be able to build Walmart down in that area. And there's also a piece there that should be negotiated to do something about it, because there's an island out there in the Ammonoosuc River that's actually owned by part of this too. And that island, in turn, is what's causing that ice jam, the one that you had the other night. You got probably $100,000 worth of damage that was done as a result of that storm that was down there the other day, with the ice jam and stuff like that. But those islands, in turn, which you can, I think you can see them right there, they're laid out. That's also part of this, but I don't think that the town ever accepted that thing on a tax thing on it. That was never done. I know that the town, in turn, refused to take the property on it and said they aren't going to take the property, and these people paid up their taxes. And it was negotiated to pay the taxes up. So I don't know where you're getting it that says that they did.
The selectmen voted to take that for non-payment of taxes last year.
I can't believe you did that. Because if you read into what's in their deed, you can't use that property for anything. You can't cut the grass, you can't mow it. Am I right, Brian? You can't do anything. You couldn't put an animal on there. You could hardly chew the trees down for anything. And I thought it would be a great place for a park or something like this. But what you got was nothing.
Well, you can't have it for a park if you can't mow it or cut anything down.
Well, you now got it, and you're owning it, and now you've got us standing the expense out of the thing on it, and those people were supposed to be paying the taxes on it. And so I can't believe that you ever accepted that, because of the fact that it was told to us at the time we looked into it that they had paid up their taxes. And because I talked with a gentleman down in Georgia at the time, and am I right, Brian? So I don't know how you ever ended up with a monstrosity, but that's what you got. And you didn't look into it, you voted on something, you shouldn't have done that. Thank you.
I support the transfer that's being developed conceptually and for the selectmen to participate in that. And the reason I do, Bruce was right about the amount of money the town has put into the industrial park. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I'll drop a copy off. Every year the LIDC develops what I call a cheat sheet, basically, which keeps track of how much is invested into the industrial park and how much tax revenues generates from it. It's a pretty impressive document. The very first vote or expenditure was in 1973. The town of Littleton voted to spend $15,000 to basically study to find out where the best place would be for an industrial park. As they say, the rest was history. Through 2013, a total of $3,925,693, almost $4 million, has been expended to build the industrial park we have right now. $384,000 came from LIDC funds. The town funds was $1,026,793. ED&A, which is Economic Development Administration, was $2.1 million. Farmers Home was $101, and the State Office of State Planning was $283,000. So we've spent $4 million to have a state-of-the-art industrial park, invested the access road, got the money to put the bridge in, which took 10 years to happen. And I think Bruce's point is right. Should there be an economic benefit to the town for all that? Well, there has been an economic benefit. And the economic benefit has been that, according to the numbers, again, generated by LIDC, $9,475,000 worth of taxes has been collected since 1977. So the deal has always been, we will build it, hopefully people will come, they will employ people, and they will pay taxes. The park has somewhere usually between 1,100 to 1,200 jobs. During the last downturn, one of the great things of the industrial park was the stability that it gave to our community that we didn't have before the industrial park. One of the things that why the industrial park was originally built was the people in 1973, of which I was not, I was junior in college, saw that the shoe shops were eventually going to leave, and they did. And at that time, there were 500 to 800 when things were really booming jobs at the two shoe shops. They've been long gone in the 70s. So the amount of money that has been generated for taxes has been a tremendous benefit. The jobs has been a greater benefit, and if we can take a portion of this land that's developed and get additional, I think it's a good return investment on it, because right now we're not generating anything on it. We're not using it for town purposes, and we're not generating any taxes, and there's no employment there. So I think it's a good thing. I urge the town to support it, and I think the selectmen are right on the money to do it. As far as the the Littleton Southern properties, I think probably the highest potential is maybe at some time we can maybe reuse them again for mitigation purposes. I'll have a different owner. They acquired them so that for wetland mitigation, so the Walmart and the Shaws could be built. They were said nothing, no development could occur on them. Maybe we can reuse them again for that. But there is, as Bruce has said, little or no economic benefit because of the requirements of the mitigation deal that was cut with the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Services. So the town has ended up with them, but they haven't been paying taxes for, what, 10, 12 years?
Yeah.
They basically just walked away from them and said, good luck. And so the town now is going to try to figure out whether they can come up with something. And Bruce's point is right on. That 125 acres that this comes out was one of the best deals we ever had. Ray Little also donated the land for the Boy Scouts camp at the top of Mount Eustis. Wonderful, wonderful person. And that $125,000 is the land for the coin company, which my recollection is the town voted to transfer it to LIDC, which could be built, and it's also our transfer station. So it's been a phenomenal piece of productive property, and I think if we transfer it again to LIDC, we'll make it even more productive. So I urge you to continue with this, and I hope the town will support you.
Article 15, transfer station improvements, maintenance, replacement, and repair funds. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to repair, replace, fix, purchase, maintain equipment, buildings, containers, and vehicles, and purchase an additional supply of town trash bags, all at the transfer station, and to authorize the withdrawal of $30,000 from the transfer station special revenue fund created for the above purposes. The funds will be used as follows: equipment, containers, vehicle, building replacement, repairs and maintenance, $15,000. Purchase of additional supply of bags, $15,000. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 8-0. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. No tax impact. Article 16, funding of townwide assessment maintenance trust fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be added to the townwide assessment maintenance trust fund previously established to come from the undesignated unreserved fund balance. The purpose for this funding is to meet the constitutional and statutory requirement that assessments are done every 5th year following RSA 75 section 8-A. It is anticipated that a revaluation will take place in 2015. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 7-1. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. No tax impact. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to authorize, unexpended Conservation Commission funds. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Conservation Commission to retain the unexpended portion of its 2013 annual appropriation, said funds to be placed in the Conservation Fund. The unexpended portion of the 2013 annual appropriation is $1,930. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 7-1. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. No tax impact. Article 18, unexpended supplement local assistance welfare expendable trust fund. To see if the town of Littleton will vote to raise and appropriate $3,433 to be placed in the local assistance expendable trust fund, with said funds to come from the undesignated unreserved fund balance. These funds represent the unexpended portion of the 2013 annual appropriation. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 7-1. Recommended by the Selectmen, 3-0. No tax impact. Okay, getting down to the last few articles that are being sponsored by the selectmen. And the heading on this one is, the following 3 warrant articles pertain only to the River District Committee created by the selectmen in January 2013. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to follow RSA 41, Section 14-A, to allow the selectmen to acquire or sell land, buildings, or both, provided, however, they shall first submit any such proposed acquisition or sale to the Planning Board and to the Conservation Commission for review and recommendation by these bodies. This article will remain in effect until rescinded by a majority vote. Budget Committee has not reviewed this, recommended by the selectmen, and there's no tax impact. One of the questions here is, when we put together the 2 River District warrant articles, Department of Revenue Administration said, well, we think you really need to separate it into 3 and giving the selectmen the authority separately to acquire, sell land and buildings in both. And that's why this article was created. I think we're concerned that having this as a standalone article may be misread by the public as giving the selectmen blanket authority anywhere in town, whereas intended to just be limited to the River District. So we've sent this and the other 2 following 2 articles off to council for the town and see if they can recraft it to meet the town needs and will also pass DRA muster. So moving on to Article 20, acquire land or rights of ways, buildings or both, or sell, swap, or trade land to develop and design the River District area around Mill Street, Saranac Street, Bridge Street, and Amanuensis Street. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of acquiring land or rights of ways and or buildings or both for the purpose of designing, planning, and developing the River District area. Furthermore, to authorize the selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend grants or other funds that are available for such purpose. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-2, recommended by the selectmen 3-0, tax impact 3.9 cents. And then I'll combine it. We have a little presentation on this, but I'll combine it with Article 21, River District Revitalization, Designing, Preliminary Engineering, and Final Report. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of designing, planning, and developing the River District area, Mill Street, Saranac Street, Bridge Street, and Amanuensis Street, and to authorize the use of $19,000 from the undesignated unreserved fund balance. This amount represents the balance left from the Riverwalk Phase 2 project. The remaining $31,000 is to come from taxation. Furthermore, to authorize the selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend grants or other funds that are available for such purpose. Recommended by the Budget Committee 5-2, recommended by the selectmen 3-0, tax impact 4.1 cents. So I think John Hennessy would like to come up and address the committee on this.
You just leave it to the first slide for a while, please. John Hennessy, Littleton resident. I'm the chair of the River District Redevelopment Commission. The town of Littleton has been working on this project for over a year now. And the River District is the area along the Amanuensis River in downtown Littleton from Bridge Street, where Corey's Sport Shop is, through to Cottage Street. And the project began in September of 2012 when the town of Littleton created a master plan for this river district along with an organization called Plan New Hampshire. Shortly thereafter, the town asked 12 people to be part of the River District Redevelopment Commission in order to lead the execution of that master plan. The 12 people on the commission represent the town manager, the select board, the planning board, as well as business leaders in the community, residents. We've got some technical engineering expertise, regional planning and funding organizations in North Country Council and NCIC. And the 2 primary goals of this project. Number 1 is to address some existing infrastructure issues that exist in this area. And number 2 is to create economic development activities that will grow the tax base for the community and help to improve the tax rate over a long time period. Before I get into some more of the specifics of the project, I think it's important to look at some of the historic perspective on this. There have been similar projects that the town has successfully completed in the past, and helps answer the question as to why we should be doing this right now. A few months ago, I heard a presentation that really addressed that as succinctly as I'd ever heard it, and that was given by Brian Ward. So I asked Brian to be here today and speak for a few minutes to address that point. So Brian, if you could, please.
Speak here, it's all right. Since the early 60s, the town, roughly every 10 or 20 years, undertakes a project to take responsibility for its economic future. And all of them have been successful to different degrees, but all of them have been beneficial to the community. In the early 60s, Saranac Glove announced that their ownership was tired, they were older, and they wanted to get out of the tannery business. The owners did. The town said, geez, we'd like to save that business. It's very important to us. It's our oldest industrial program. And so what happened was, between 1960, when the Saranac Glove voted to liquidate, and January 23rd of 1963, the town voted to build the sewage treatment plant. It was an expenditure of $1.25 million. It was an effort, and the primary purpose was to save Saranac Glove. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful in saving Saranac Glove. However, it became the bedrock of our economic future. In 1973, a whole new group of people came together, LIDC, and they said, we want to build an industrial park. Weren't quite sure how to do it. They went about it, and as we discussed, the rest is history. For about a $4 million investment, we have 1,100 to 1,200 jobs, $9.5 million in tax base, and the town spent $1 million to make that happen. It changed Littleton forever. There's no community in the nation wouldn't want an industrial park the quality that we have. About 10 years later, we had a great industrial park. We didn't have a bridge or access road to it, but we had a wonderful industrial park, but the rest of our economy had kind of gone to hell in a handbasket. So the Economic Development Task Force was created, and 75 people came together to take ownership of our economic future. In 1995, our tax base was $241 million. It peaked out at $794, and I think Fred's got it predicted about $764 this year, somewhere in that range. So our collective effort that we did to take responsibility for it really showed up in our tax base, added about 800 jobs from that combined effort. And now, 20 years later, we have a new group of citizens with younger people. John Hennessy's provided phenomenal leadership. Jimmy McMahon, we've just had a good group. And I'm not a member of the commission, so I'm here as a fan, not as a member of the commission. Also, I also want to let you know, I'm not on the LIDC board, have been for 10 years. So anything I've said is, again, as a citizen, and not because I've got a particular law. Do that. The community, during the task force period, spent about $10 million on downtown improvements to improve the downtown area. This plan will allow us to complete many of them, include the Riverwalk and different areas. And what we hope, or what the River Commission is doing, is to take the accent on the river the same way we did with the industrial park. Nobody knew that we would have 14 businesses and 9.5 million when we started, but they started and they worked it, and that's what the River Commission has done. Again, with the Economic Development Task Force, nobody knew what we were going to be able to accomplish, but we worked it. And I have to say that I'm a big fan of this particular group, because what it took us a long time to learn, they've been a lot quicker than we were. Now, they probably learned from a lot of our mistakes along the way, which is okay, but they've engaged environmentally, they've engaged funding sources. This group has worked very, very hard to prepare our community for economic development and improvement in the community. If these warrant articles are passed, at the worst, we're going to have a comprehensive plan to address some compelling infrastructure issues that someone else will speak about in detail. At the best, it'll be an economic spark similar to the industrial park and the economic task force. But there's one thing we've learned in the last 50 years. If we don't take responsibility for our future, there's nobody else that's going to do it. And I think with this commission, with the select board's leadership, support of the budget committee, I think we're well on the way. I think Littleton's starting to get a little bit of its mojo back, coming back out of the economy. And the key for towns like ours is to be a little bit ahead of the rest of the towns when you're coming out of a bad economic cycle. I think all of the hard work from the charrette to now is going to pay off spades for us down the road. How long it's going to take us to do it? Any expenditure over and above here will come back before the voters. And just like they did. And just to show you on the industrial park, there were 9 different expenditures that the industrial park came back and received funds from the town for. So this is an ongoing process. It isn't one and done, and then we go from there. So I can't say enough about the work that John and his team has done together. I'm a big fan, and I hope we'll all support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. The first goal of the 2 that I wanted to speak to was discussing the current state of the infrastructure that's along this corridor. So Selectwoman Seymour agreed to speak on this topic.
May I comment on what's been said?
You want to wait until we're done with the presentation, Dan? Make some notes.
I got the notes here. He's just talking and it's fresh, and we have viewers who are going to be, it may set them off getting some information that doesn't jive with what you just said after the end of this.
But we're not done with the discussions.
I have been working off and on. I try to work with this group as much as I can. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that Brian has just said, and I was asked specifically to talk about some of the infrastructure issues. Brian was talking about Littleton's mojo, and I just want to point out to people that over the last couple of years, a lot of communities in the North Country in particular have had a really hard time with the economy. There are some places in the North Country you drive through and it really looks sad. The sidewalks look bad and the buildings look bad and there aren't very many people around and there's not much going on. But when you come to Littleton, Littleton doesn't look like that. And people have been commenting over and over and over to me for the last couple of years, especially the last 2 summers. This place really is hopping. There's traffic, there are people in parking, people are having a hard time finding places to park on Main Street, there's color, there's music, there are flowers, there are all kinds of things happening in Littleton. And I think that we all, whether we agree with the way things are done or not, I think we can all agree that Littleton has been particularly healthy, and particularly healthy because of a really wide diversity of businesses and opportunities that are available here. And the reason that we have these opportunities and these businesses and this broad base of sort of economic firmness that Littleton has that other places don't have is because this town has a history of supporting projects that will bring more people to town, that will bring jobs to the people who live here, that will provide a tax base to the community. And this project that we're working on, the River District project, is another one of those 4 sightful projects that I think we're going to see over the long haul is going to be really beneficial to this town. We're not jumping in over our heads and doing a lot of things that we haven't carefully thought through. The 3, it's really just 2 items, but the Department of Revenue Administration says that we have to put the 3rd one in just to make sure we can do the other 2. The 2 projects that we want to do, the 2 items that we're asking the community for right now, involve being able to do some base work. And when I talk about base, I'm talking about infrastructure work. So under the street, we're going to look at what we have, how old it is, what studies have already been done. We're going to pull together a comprehensive plan for dealing with sewer, water, power, stormwater, all of the utilities that need to be put in place and that need to be done properly in order to provide a base that will encourage people and businesses to come to that area. We have a really underused section of the community that's right there off of our busy, alive Main Street, and we believe that we can tie it in and we can pull the whole thing together and make something that's really special for this town. So the $31,000 that we're asking for, is it 31 or is it 34, Fred?
The first one is 34.
The money that we're asking for to work on engineering, 30?
Yes.
Is to lay the base, to make sure that we know what we have, and to be able to start determining what we need to do to update, to make sure that we do not get caught with inferior infrastructure that will discourage people from using that area. And I think that anybody knows, if you're thinking about moving to a community, or you're thinking about moving to a neighborhood in a community, one of the things that you consider is whether you have town sewer or not, whether you have access to town water or not, and whether you're going to be flooded every time it rains. What we want to do is make sure that this section of town that we see as our next up-and-coming section is properly laid out, that people know exactly what's going where, that we don't have to do the same thing or dig up the road 4 or 5 times because we didn't have a plan. And that's what we're asking people to support us doing. We're not building buildings to put people in. If we buy property or trade property, it's going to be to straighten out some roadways that are not straight, to buy some rights of way. Some of the road that we travel on when we go down behind the backside of Main Street, between Main Street and the river, some of the property that we go on is simply easements that we travel over. We're not even on town roads down there in some places. We want to try to rectify that and make sure that what we have is a good solid base to start another really good economic development project. You want to say something?
Thanks, Margie. And to say a little bit more about the warrant article, which is the $50,000, which nets to $31,000 after the 19 is applied. What that is going to get is going to take the plan that's been done so far and move it forward to be ready for construction, which of course would be brought back to the taxpayers prior to moving forward with any of that project. The infrastructure underground is the oldest infrastructure in the town of Littleton, and the infrastructure above ground, there are 2 primary issue areas that are unsafe for transportation. One is the intersection of Meadow Street and Saranac Street, and the other is behind the town offices, where there are 4 roadways connecting into an area that really is in need of some safe redesign, including walkways that don't exist today. If you look forward to the economic development aspect of this, the reason that we feel this is going to be so successful is it builds off of and connects the successful work that's been done to date on Main Street, which has really created the vibrant area of our community downtown, and connects the river area to it, which has developable parcels of land. And together, along with the history that Brian commented on, it is really going to be the catalyst for success here. If we look at the accomplishments to date for the commission, we've had over 70 businesses and individuals who have contributed to this project to help make it successful to the point it is today. What we have so far from the planning projects, Fred, if you could move forward 3 slides, please, for me. This is the overall vision that was produced from the planning effort. It's a little small to see up on the screen, but what it creates is it creates gateways between Main Street and the river with these dotted lines here, which highlight the areas that the 2 districts can be connected into one downtown corridor. It'll really accentuate the river, which is one of the best assets the town of Littleton has, which has been underutilized thus far, and will help really promote economic development in the future. If you go ahead one more, Fred. We've gone so far, the town is to actually get renderings completed, which address some key issues, including one that was mentioned earlier, is parking. You can see There are quite a few additional parking spaces that are rendered in here, as well as a straight roadway and walkways, and incorporating the Riverwalk into the overall plan. There's further detail, read forward one more, improvements to the intersection that we had been talking about. So as you can see, this is the vision. And what we've done as a commission since then is brought in some engineering expertise from a couple engineering firms in the town of Littleton, Riverside Engineering and Horizons, who've taken this one step further now and have taken plans that have been produced for the town of Littleton in prior projects and overlaid, as you can see in yellow here, improvements to the intersection all the way through the district, through the Cottage Street area that I mentioned, to really make that a viable corridor for the future. Funding, extremely important. To date, we have got pledges for $25,000 of private funding, which will go towards a demonstration project. Towards the Mill Street end, we'll take one of those gateways that were shown in that master plan and bring that forward through to construction, which would then hopefully spur the additional construction throughout the district. We've also received $30,000 in grant funding, which will go forward towards this district as well. And that's just a starting point. We've got a lot of people dedicated to the project right now and who are teed up to continue working hard for the community in the next year. And a positive vote from the town on these three articles, will really allow the commission and all the 70-plus people and more to move forward and really have a positive impact. And the second warrant article that we talked about, at the end of the slides, anything with the $30,000 that would relate to rights-of-way, purchases, or trades of property will all be brought back to the taxpayers through public hearings, at least 2 public hearings. So nothing that we're doing here beyond the planning aspect of this is going to be completed without further review by the taxpayers. So I think it's important to note there. And one of the most important things that this allows us to do, if we approve these 2 warrant articles, is to go out and start the process and further from where we've got today of getting public funding for the projects to match and hopefully exceed in the rule of thumb formulas. It was mentioned earlier, 3-for-1 matching was a pretty good deal for the town. Well, that's 3-for-1, 4-for-1 matching is kind of the rule of thumb to be used in a project like this. We've already met with our congressional delegation to introduce the project to them, as well as to state and regional funding authorities. So we feel confident that we're well on our way to getting some public funding for the project as well, and really look forward to doing more of that in the next year.
Yeah.
Now we have one question.
Is there anybody here that can promise that if a taxpayer puts in $1, that they will get $1.01 back? Has it ever happened? We're talking, I'm hearing things about tax base. We're going to increase the tax base, help to improve the tax rate. Nobody has said anything about how all this progress and all the progress that has already happened has ever lowered the taxes of the people. Every 20 years, there's events that are supposed to happen here. Did after those events happen, have the taxes gone down for the people? Have there been any tax decreases for the taxpayers because of all this stuff that's going on?
Let me speak to that.
Sure.
Okay. Well, first of all, if you take a look at 1978, when Connors Hoffman went down, that was 671 jobs over about 6 months. I was the second one laid off, by the way, day before Christmas. And, you know, the prevailing wage then was quite a bit lower than the prevailing wage now. So if you take a look at what the tax rate was then, what the tax rate is now, you have to account for inflation, all right? So the, you know, the dollar that we have today is probably worth 40% less than it was 10 years ago, all right? There are no promises, there are no guarantees in any of this, but I'll tell you something, is that LIDC did a whole lot to turn this town around. This town was a mess back in 78, 79, and 80, all right? And we had a hard time again. It was back when Hitchens was cutting back and they closed down the Reddington Street plant. And the people in this town got together and there was a lot that was done. Some of it was with public funds. And you know something is that when people have jobs, they're able to employ other people because they spend that money. You know, if you're looking for guarantees, you're in the wrong place. There's just no guarantees.
There are people here asking for money. You're asking for the taxpayer to give them money.
That's right.
Now, what you're not saying to the taxpayer, if you'll give us some money, we will produce a decrease in your taxes. What incentive does anybody have to give money if it doesn't come back to them?
Well,
a business couldn't operate that way.
This isn't a contract. And the other thing is that when money is used for some sort of a public project or a project that is going to increase our tax base, you know, a lot of times, yeah, maybe it's not going to decrease taxes, but you know something, it may do a lot to stabilize taxes. The problem that we have here is that we have fixed costs, and we have inflation, you know, there's fuel costs and all the other stuff. And so our hope is that we can actually grow our way out of it. Is by increasing the tax base, we're able to, you know, we may not be able to lower taxes, but if we can stabilize taxes, that'd be a great accomplishment.
The thing is, the taxes are always going up there. 2011 was the one time they went down a little bit. You said that this is not a contract. Well, I want the taxpayers who are watching this to understand this is not a contract. You're not being guaranteed. In fact, you've never gotten anything back, essentially.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. That's the way you're reading it.
If there has, I'd like to know what years that the taxes have gone down. And
you mean, how about the years that the taxes have been stabilized and people's income has increased?
Okay, let me have those years too.
Well, I don't happen to have them at my fingertip. Okay.
You said everything that you have, or I'm not sure what you were saying there, everything you have the taxpayer has. Or no, that's my comment. You were saying that the towns have hit, you know, recessions have hit them, all sorts of things have hit them. The same things have hit the taxpayers. All I'm saying is you're asking for money. All I'd like you to do is just like in any private business. If you're going to ask for $1, then guarantee the taxpayer that they're going to get $1 and a penny back, $1 and a mill, anything more than what they put in.
Well, I don't know that there are any guarantees. I know one thing is that we don't have to travel 20 or 30 miles to purchase a trousers or shirts or anything like that, or we have a pretty vital retail sector in this town. There are people that don't want to spend the money, but they don't like the inconvenience of not being able to get what they want. And that's where we are today.
Mike, can I make a comment?
Sure.
To address the private business investment aspect, many of us here work for private businesses, and there are no guarantees in private business or in public investment either. From a private business perspective, you make the best investment decisions you can with the approach that it will pay back in the future, and this is exactly what we're doing here. We've recognized a good investment opportunity that we're looking to pay back in the future.
I may speak to that. In a private sector, the person who puts up the money bears the cost, and if it works out well, they benefit. If it doesn't, they're the ones that suffer. In this situation here, it's not we here that are suffering, it's the taxpayer that gets hit if something fails.
I'm sorry, may I just say, Dan, what we're doing here is giving people the opportunity to vote on this.
And
they can come out and they can vote whether they want this or not, because
not everybody considers that all there is tax money. There are people who believe that there also are standards of living and basic community that are worth something to them. It's not all about $1 here and $1 here. Some of it is about having a community that you're happy living in, that you have a job in, that you feel comfortable in, that you feel safe in. And that's the kind of community that we're trying to provide.
You mentioned standards of living. When your taxes are, when you have more and more taxes taken from you, as a taxpayer, your standard of living is decreased.
Not necessarily.
Well, it is for me. If I don't,
I'm sorry, Dan,
if
you
more
both
money
did
is
it.
taken from me than normally comes in, then my standard of living has to decrease because I cannot afford the things that I used to.
Time to move.
Time to move to a town with a lower tax
That's
rate.
right.
No, I don't have to do that. You can't put that out on anybody. We all have free choice of where we live, and so it's not time to move.
And you did choose to live here.
Yeah.
It's not time to move. I don't ever want to hear that kind of crap.
I'm saying you chose to live
No,
here.
and I am giving the taxpayers here who are listening to this another side of this story. Don't ever tell me that it's time to move, please.
Bruce?
One, I gotta say, John Hennessy is a younger person taking the bull by the horns. It's nice to see people like this doing it, because I'm on the other end of this and probably won't be around very many more years. But John, in turn, and if you have younger people, in turn, he grew up here. His family grew up here on it, and he's putting something into it. I may not believe in it, but consequently, they still are doing a very good job on the basis of what there is. I think there's a lot more to understanding that. I think that I agree with the concept of the river. It's a great thing to be able to utilize in doing it if you have the right thing. But I have a real problem with necessarily what you're doing in down there. I can't read it. That doesn't mean that somebody else can, but I can't read into it that what they're doing down there is going to be a major thing on behalf of our town. I could see a lot of other things that I would love to see in this town being able to do. You go down through there and you've had sewer problems down in the back down there that have cropped up in the last 2 or 3 years, and you've had to spend a lot of money. There was a lot of lawsuits and everything else down in that area. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but what went by the old Hennessy house was a nice big brook, and there's a street named after it called Brook Street on it, and there's quite a brook, or it used to be, that ran down through underneath there, and that could be another expense. I don't know whether you're aware of it. Was there? John, are you?
Oh,
I'm talking to John Hennessy. Are you aware of it?
Not familiar with what you're talking about.
You are familiar with it?
I'm not.
You're not, right. Well, right by where your grandparents lived and your father lived and everything on Elm Street was a brook that came down through there on it, and it goes down underneath there. And that would be very expensive to replace on it. I don't know that it doesn't have the water, because it used to have a lot more coming through the reservoir. But things of that nature. But I still have a heck of a problem with it, based on the fact that the state has adopted the 250 feet from the river back on it. The federal government has just put through one of the highest cost of flood insurance on this nation has ever seen. If you were on the ocean and you own a piece of the property down there, to get it financed, you've got to pay about $25,000 to get a flood insurance policy. Anybody that's along the river is going to have flood insurance, and it is astronomical to get it now and pay for it on anything that you do. You're limiting some parts of it, but still, you've got a beautiful river from the point of what you can do. But to try to say that what you're going to do, and what I've seen, I have a major problem that I think that I wish your time was put into something else, John, let's put it that way. But you're taking it. We did the same thing with the industrial park. It worked out. I hope what you do is fine, but I think that I just haven't been able to read into it that it's the greatest thing in the world, from the point of looking into it and saying that that's the best investment that our town could make if we've got extra dollars to do it. That's the only thing. That doesn't mean that it's not the wrong thing to be doing. It may be the right thing to be doing, but I personally am not convinced with it from that part on it and seeing it from that. Just the fact that I've lived here all my life and looking at it. But that doesn't mean you guys won't. If you are younger, take the bull by the horns and see what you can do. And if the people want to endorse it, that's fine. But I still, what's the zone down there? I mean, you as a committee ought to know what the zoning of it is.
Well, it's mixed, commercial for part of it, and residential for down along Saranac Street.
You really should attack, before you spend any money, you should go and attack that, because your zoning has a real effect on what you can do. And if it's zoned wrong, you can't go and do things down there. You should be attacking what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, and get the zoning in check to be able to be effective, to be able to do what you want to do. And that you have to come back to the town of Littleton to do it too. So you got a lot more on your plate than asking for money that you haven't got these unknowns for. And I really think you should be really getting into some of those things before you really ask us for a lot of them. Those are real simple things to come back with and getting solutions out of it too. It's like that investment that the town made, that Brian Ward talked about. I think that they sold that building down there that was like by the Saranac factory. That was put in there for the tannery to go down to the sewer plant down through there, and it was all underground. I think it was a channel maybe 4 or 6 feet high out. It was a small building down there, concrete building. I don't know that it could ever be used, but I'm sure it's still there as an asset from underground. It probably needs to be worked over from that part too. But what Brian said about the Saranac plant, that wasn't the truth. I hate to tell you, Brian. The banks in turn put Saranac Glove out of business. They borrowed the money down there on it, and they put the guy's brother-in-law on the board of directors out of thing on it, and he ran the money right through his own pocket and put the company out of business. And it wasn't a local bank. Thanks.
Just one question. I don't have a problem with the $50K for the plan, the design, the final report. I guess my question is on the other one, the $30,000 to acquire land and right-of-ways and buildings. That sounds a little bit like the cart before the horse. I mean, I'd like to see the plan, have it fully explained before we go out and start buying properties and buildings and such.
And I think they go hand in hand as the planning process is developed. The group will be working with the property owners, and what better time to establish an agreement with the property owners than when you're initially discussing what your plans for development are. So often what happens is you have these nice looking plans, and then a property owner realizes, oh geez, I can step in the way of this project moving forward. So all of a sudden my project, my land is worth 2, 3, 10 times what it may have been before. So this is trying to nix that issue and work hand in hand with the property owners down there, but not let them get too far out in front of the overall process.
I think to answer Dan's question, I don't think anyone can guarantee that any of the investments we'll do will turn a dollar back to the taxpayer. Bruce's son Brian does a phenomenal job along with his fellow commissioners at the parks. And the monies we spend on our parks, basically, there is no guarantee that we get $1 worth of profit back for the job that Brian does. Just put a brand new park playground down in Apthorpe. There is no dollar for dollar investment at the town level, and that you get the same thing back to the tax collector, to the taxpayer. However, they do receive services. However, they do live in a community that they like to do. One thing I can guarantee, Dan, is that if we do nothing, we're going to spend a lot of money. Just this past year, correct me if I'm wrong, down on Mill Street, we spent $30,000 because of the inadequate infrastructure down there. So, Dan, it's going to cost us money not to do anything. In addition, the town had a lawsuit because our storm drain was connected to our sewer drain. And that ended up in a lawsuit. I don't know, that was supposedly confidential, what the actual costs were, but it cost the town something. Every time there is a major rainstorm, we have washouts on Saranac Street, Mill Street, Why? Because we have inadequate storm drain, and the town is liable for not doing that damage. Now it's part of the 30,000. So if we don't do anything, I guarantee you, we're going to continue the same problems that we've had before, Now, one of the things of the comprehensive plan that they're developing, and Bruce could probably tell you scripture and verse, for many years this town would pave a street one year, put the sewer line in the next year, put the storm drain in the year after that, and then put the water line. The whole idea of why you're putting a comprehensive plan in is to save money. Now, one of the things LIDC has done is save money. Not one penny has ever gone to pay anyone who participated in LIDC participation. Same thing with the Economic Development Task Force. People are committed to saving the taxpayers' money. They volunteer their time just like John Hennessy does, and out of their creativity and their knowledge and the investments that the town votes to do, we improve as a community. Are we perfect? Are we ever going to meet Dan's test of a dollar for dollar? No. But we do work hard to save the taxpayer money, and it's been something that every one of the things, because I guarantee you that if all of a sudden somebody started getting paid for their volunteer time, the taxpayers would stop paying. So the reason the taxpayers have supported all of the initiatives over the last 30, 40 years is that prior generations, John's father, Eddie, Bruce, his time, many of us, have put the time into volunteering. So I think, John, just keep it up. And again, down on in that area right there, 25 buildings have been removed through prior economic development initiatives, substandard buildings to open up that area. And again, I urge everyone to drive from Mill Street to Saranac Street or Saranac Street to Mill Street, and don't tell us that we don't have some problems to deal with there, because we do. And whether it's this plan or another plan, we're going to have to deal with it sooner rather than later. And with John's skill set and the team he's put together, we're going to get a great plan.
Can I have one more thing? I always felt when I was on the industrial board and everything else, one of the greatest things that the town fathers did back at the turn of the century was to put in the town water. You have to have water resources, and you have to have septic systems. Not septic systems, but you have to have storage to take care of it for health reasons too. But the town of Littleton in turn voted to put up $50,000 to go out to Gale River, buy that, bury the line, and put water in here, gravity flow, and it made our town grow. And that was an investment, and I don't know whether you consider it to be paying off, but it's been used for 100 years, and it's as good today as it was later on. They've improved some of it. But that's the type of stuff that communities have to do to make things grow. And that's no different than what they're talking about here, if they can make it go. But consequently, I always took it that these people did a tremendous thing back in engineering something at the turn of the century and giving the people of Littleton fresh, clean water that ran all the way down from Gale River without a penny. It ran downhill, and going downhill in the service to our community. We had to expand on the water lines and do it, and it's done through user fees. Your septic system, your storage is all on user fees too. So consequently, we've had to put up the money to build the initial sewer plant thing on it. But consequently, everybody seems to use it one way or the other. Thank you.
I have no problem with user fees. I have no problem with the private companies getting in there and doing this stuff, and if you use it, you pay for it.
I'm going to use my executive authority and move this hearing along. It's getting late, and we still have petition articles to go through. Thank you very much, John. Article 22, Little Parks and Recs, scheduled tennis court resurfacing. Seems the town will raise and appropriate some $5,000 for the purpose of repairs, improvements, additional resurfacing, and striping to the tennis courts at Remick Park, with matching funds up to $2,500 from donations. The amount to come from taxation is $2,500. None of these petition articles have been acted on by the Budget Committee or the Selectmen yet, but the tax impact of this is 0.3 of 1 cent. Article 23, Parks and Recreation Department replacement tractor. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $35,000 for the purpose of purchasing a replacement tractor and implements. This will replace the existing 18-year-old Parks and Recreation Department tractor, which will be traded in towards a replacement tractor, and to further authorize the Parks and Recreation Commissioners to trade in the old tractor. Tax impact is 4.6 cents. Article 24, Parks and Recreation pool roof repair and replacement. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to repair and replace the roof and related materials of the Littleton swimming pool bathhouse, with matching funds of up to $5,000 to come from Littleton Parks and Recreation Pool Fund. The amount to come from taxation is $5,000 with 7/10 of 1 cent tax impact. Article 25, Parks and Recreation timber harvest profits, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the Parks and Recreation Equipment and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund, which was created at the 2013 town meeting. Said funds to come from timber proceeds from harvesting the town-owned recreational land of Mount Eustis. No tax impact. Any questions or comments on those 4 Parks and Recreation petitioned articles?
Yeah, just quickly, this one here, that is, instead of going into the general fund, it's going to go into the Park and Rec fund?
That's correct.
Yes. Briefly, Dan, this has happened twice before. On Mount Eustis, there was a selective cut, I don't know, 14, 16 years ago, and the town voted to take the proceeds from that fund and then to allow that fund to be funds to be expended for park projects upon the vote of the community. In addition, the town acquired what was known as the Eaton property, and that basically had a selective cut, and funds were generated from that in the same thing. So this is the 3rd time that the town has authorized funds on selective cuts to be used for reinvestment into the parks.
And the reason for this cut is twofold. One is to resurrect the Mount Eustis ski trails in advance of the Mount Eustis Ski Group putting in a ski tow, and secondly to relocate the snowmobile trail through that property. So those 2 activities will result in the logging activities.
Right. If it goes into the general fund and Park and Recs wants to do something, then they've got to have a warrant article for the taxpayers to approve it, whereas, and this is a question, whereas if it's into their funds, they don't have to go before the taxpayer, they just have the money there and they can use it?
Well, if it goes into their operating budget, it'll be considered revenue to offset their operating costs.
They won't have to go before the taxpayers?
Ultimately, their overall budget will have to be approved, as we discussed tonight. So they have a budget, and then they have petitioned articles also. Article 26, Glenwood Cemetery Association, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to continue repairs of the cemetery wall on West Main Street. It'll have a 2 cent tax impact. I think this is the 3rd year that the trustees have put forth this article to continue the repair of the Glenwood Cemetery wall. Article 27, Littleton Public Library, see if the town will vote to create a capital reserve fund to be known as the Littleton Public Library Building Improvement Fund, and to further to raise $15,000 to be placed in the fund, said funds to come from taxation, and to further appoint the Littleton Public Library Board of Library Trustees as agents to expend this fund as needed. Tax impact of 2 cents. Article 28, Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to support the Littleton Area Chamber of Commerce. 2 cent tax impact. They've asked for this fairly routinely for the last few years. Oops. I guess I've got 2 Article 28s. And Article, maybe I must have misnumbered those. All right. Article probably 29 now. Grafton County Senior Citizens Council. Shall the voters raise and appropriate $33,000 to the Grafton County Senior Citizen Council to the Littleton Area Senior Citizen Center and Service Link Resource Center for services for Littleton residents in 2014. These services include congregate meals, home-delivered meals, transportation, outreach support, service link support, and more. 2013, Littleton Area Senior Center provided services for 642 Littleton residents, and Service Link provided services for 279 residents. The cost of providing these services was $377,565.39. The cost of this will be 4.3 cents on tax impact. Article 31, Northern Human Services, White Mountain Mental Health. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,696.12 as the town's contribution to White Mountain Mental Health and Common Ground. Programs of Northern Human Services serving the mental health and developmental services needs of the town of Littleton residents. Tax impact of 1.3 cents. Article 32, Ammonoosuc Community Health Services. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the Ammonoosuc Community Health Services. ACHS is a nonprofit community health center that provides primary preventive health care to anyone regardless of ability to pay. This will help ACHS continue to provide high-quality care to 2010 current residents, current Littleton patients, as well as reach more of those in need. Tax impact of 2 cents. North Country Transit Tri-County Cap, to see if the town of Littleton will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $4,000 to support the North Country Transit Lancaster, Whitefield, Littleton Tri-Town Public Transit Route, 0.5 cents. Tri-County Community Action Program, provide nonprofit agency requesting $11,000 funding from the town of Littleton. Funds are requested are used in 2 very important ways. We receive matching grants to continue providing direct assistance to your citizens. Secondly, local community contact office is only funded by fuel assistance programs from December through April. We start taking applications in July, so applications can be processed by the time the program opens, saving towns substantial money in their town's welfare budget for emergency heating assistance. Through the efforts of TCCAP, the citizens of Littleton received a total of $385,309 in assistance. Tax impact of 1.4 cents. And I think finally, the Birch House, we have the undersigned registered voters of the town of Littleton request the Board of Selectmen place on the 2014 town warrant petition article for municipal funds the amount of $3,080 for the support center at Birch. These funds will support essential domestic and sexual violence prevention services and emergency shelter for victims and survivors in the community. 0.4 cents. Oh, Article 36, Boys and Girls Clubs of the North Country. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to support the Boys and Girls Clubs of the North Country in order to provide a healthy, safe, and productive after-school and vacation camp environment for children from Littleton and other area towns. Tax impact of 1.3 cents. And that's the end of it. So I will encourage you to, if there are any questions, we'll answer the questions.
Quick question. Was there, I thought the community center was submitting a petition article. Do you know if they got that in or not?
They did.
But that didn't show up.
And that must be the slide that dropped out.
All right. Just curious about that. Thank you.
And I do want to talk to that, and I apologize to them. That was for $33,000 for the community center to upgrade their wiring. It's the first of, I think, 3 years appropriation request that they anticipate to make improvements to the Littleton Community Center. It'll be for wiring and fire alarm services. So thank you, Michael, for bringing that to my attention.
Dan, again, in regards to the Chamber of Commerce asking for $15,000, I believe that is almost all for Main Street and for, and part of it will be the flowers along Main Street. I would like to ask the voters not to, to vote that down. That's something that the businesses along Main Street should pay for, not the taxpayers. And in regards to warrant number 32, it's said in there, regardless of their ability to pay. I wasn't sure if that meant that if someone is well enough off to pay, that they will be given this, this care whether they can pay for it or not. And
They
they're
use a
not
sliding scale.
Okay, thank you. Number 34, Tri-County cap said that the citizens of Littleton were given back like $300 and some thousand. I don't think they meant the citizens, or do they mean the citizens of Littleton, or do they mean some citizens who were able to use their facilities?
No, that's the value of the services they provided to residents of Littleton.
To some residents who use their facilities, not to all the residents of Littleton, correct?
No, just to the ones, yeah, correct.
Okay. And then another thing, I noticed that,
Which, may I point out, saves you from having to spend your money taking care of those people.
another thing I wanted to point out was that Tri-County cap last year, under 2 or 3 different names, asked for money from the taxpayers. I think that's kind of a sneaky way of going in. Instead of them just asking for some three sizes this big, which they might not get, they broke it down with a couple of their things that are still, groups that are under their aegis, and asked for money that way.
What 2 or 3 were they?
I would have to check. I looked them up because I wrote them all letters last year.
North Country Transit would be one.
I don't know the names of them, but there were.
That's because they have dedicated revenue streams.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought that was instead of Tri-County cap coming up and saying I want $90,000, they have 3 people asking for $30,000.
Yeah, they want it for specific services.
Right.
I guess I do want to read the Littleton Community Center Capital Reserve Improvement Fund article to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to support a donation to the Littleton Community Center Capital Reserve Improvement Fund for a partial replacement and upgrade of the wiring system for the main community center building, and to further authorize the withdrawal and use of $5,000 from the trust fund of unspent funding approved at the 2013 town meeting for community center improvements to decrease the tax impact of this article. So it would effectively be a $25,000 appropriation. And I, once again, will correct that in the slideshow for the deliberative session. And to remind you all, deliberative session is February 4th, 6 p.m. Right here. Correct?
Mr. Chairman? And that concludes, Brian, please make it quick.
Absolutely. I approached Milt today. The selectmen discussed, do you want to speak first, Milt?
Go ahead.
Okay. I read the report of the selectmen debating whether to include a warrant article to do the selectmen's meeting room in the town office. And it was one of those unique articles of where everybody was right. The 2 selectmen that said this may not have been the year to do it were right. I could understand that perspective with some of the other things. And Margie's comments that we need to utilize that building more, and that's a room that could be used very well. So what I said to Milt, and we've done this in the past with other warrant articles, that if the town would put up half the fund based upon that the other half is raised through private fundraising, that has been a way to achieve things that are close. And I think it would be a good improvement to the town building. I think it would be well used, and we have to kind of discuss it here tonight for you to be able to address it later on. The rule is that all items have to be discussed at the budget hearing or they can't be added in by the selectmen. So I spoke to Milt about it, and then he was going to bring it up, but I guess I beat him to it.
The issue here is the extent to which we would address part of the cost or half of the cost. I think it was $35,000. I'm sorry? $35,000 to address the issue of renovation, as well as ask the community to contribute to a fund drive to cover the other half, and perhaps recognize a person who's no longer living here in Littleton, Paul McGoldrick, who spent many, many years spending an extremely amount of time and energy on his own part to further the community here in a positive way. And so that was the discussion that we had today, and that was the recommendation. And I'm sure we had viewed all of the warrant articles, obviously, where Mike and I came to agreement without even talking to each other. It just had to do with what else was on the warrant, and clearly the labor agreement with the fire department is uppermost in my mind. And Margie was correct as well as Fred in bringing it forward. In renovating that room, we would have additional space to hold meetings and to use that space more efficiently. So that's the discussion.
Can we bring it back at this meeting?
Yes.
Can I make a motion to put it back on the warrant? And maybe we put it on saying that, lowering the amount from 35 to, say, 18 from the town? Only if we can match, only if we're matching privately raised funds?
This was done in 2008 when I was a selectman with the community house. I think it was a $10,000 for $10,000 match. I think if you look back at that, Fred could come up with the language for you to do it. I don't know if you've got another work session or something. I think you really ought to. I'm just suggesting it, and then you guys meet again, and if there is another meeting, maybe with the budget committee or whatever, however you can do it, to possibly have the language put in front of you. I'm just bringing this idea up, and because it needs to be discussed here. So again, just to leave it to you guys to figure out what the best way to do it.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay. You made a motion. Is there a second for that
Second.
motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Okay. Okay. So we're all set here, right?